Chapter 14:13. Kuroda smiled faintly. In just an instant, he had a panoramic view of everything in the field. The 5 members of the Shadow Guard did not rush up together. Instead, they let Sasuke, who had the Magatama Rinnegan and the Eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, launch a frontal attack. The others were scattered around, ready to support at any time. This set of tactics was in line with the norm. If they were dealing with ordinary people, there would not be any flaws, but if they were dealing with Hyojin, then their tactics would be full of mistakes. Kuroda didn't panic when he saw the cold glint of the sword in Sasuke's hand slashing towards him. He casually stretched out 2 fingers and casually pinched the blade of the sword that was cutting through the wind. This? Sasuke, who was holding the Kusanagi sword, looked stiff. He had expected many situations, but he never thought that he would encounter such a thing. He slashed with all his strength, but Hyojin only used 2 fingers to pinch it. However, he did not expect this slash to determine the outcome of the battle, so he immediately followed the original plan and instantly looked back at Naruto, who was not far away. He activated the space-time pupil technique Heavenly Hand Force, contained in his Magatama Rinnegan, and exchanged positions with Naruto, who had just condensed the Mahajiromachi. Swish, with a sharp sound of breaking wind, the position swap was completed in an instant. At this time, the corner of Sasuke's mouth raised slightly. In his mind, he had already begun to imagine how Hyojin would react in the face of Naruto, who had suddenly replaced him and held the Mahajiromachi in his hand. "Don't be distracted during the battle." Suddenly, Hyojin's calm voice came into Sasuke's ear. Sasuke was shocked and immediately turned his head. He found that although he had used the Heavenly Hand Force to exchange positions with Naruto in the distance, Hyojin had also changed positions with him for some reason. At the moment of confusion, he found that the Kusanagi sword that Hyojin was pinching had an inconspicuous technique. It looked very similar to Kakashi's Flying Thunder God technique. Flying Thunder God technique? Sasuke suddenly understood. In the short contact just now, Hyojin had quietly engraved the Flying Thunder God technique on the Kusanagi sword in his hand. Then, at the moment when he used the Heavenly Hand Force, Hyojin also used the Flying Thunder God technique and flashed over with him. Bang! Almost at the moment when Sasuke's face was filled with realization, Hyojin turned around and kicked him away. Naruto, who had pounced on nothing, was stunned for a moment. Then, he immediately turned around and wanted to pounce on Hyojin again. But as soon as he turned around and looked away, Hyojin suddenly flashed back to his original position and casually punched Naruto. It turned out that when Hyojin used the Flying Thunder God technique to track Sasuke, he had also left a Flying Thunder God technique at the same place. At this moment, seeing Sasuke and Naruto being defeated in an instant, Otsutsuki Samurai, who had been waiting for an opportunity, could no longer hold back. He immediately waved the Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion and slashed at Hyojin. Swish! In the dazzling brilliance, the golden sword slashed down instantly. Hyojin tilted his head slightly and stretched out his left hand to meet the golden sword that was slashing at him. In his left palm, an extremely condensed chakra palm print flew out. Boom! In an instant, Otsutsuki Samurai's Golden Wheel Reincarnation Explosion collided with Hyojin's 80 God Void strikes, producing a deafening roar and stirring up a cloud of smoke and dust. "This is my chance." Upon seeing this, Ziyuan immediately pounced forward. She opened her palms that were put together and activated the demon sealing coffin. One after another, majestic enchantment walls rose from the ground and combined into a regular square, covering the area where Sui Jin was located, and continued to shrink. As the smoke and dust dissipated, Hyojin's figure quickly appeared in the ceiling barrier. Did he succeed? For a moment, whether it was Naruto and Sasuke who had been sent flying, Ziyuan and Otsutsuki Samurai who were fighting, or Xiang Lin who was watching from afar, all of them had a trace of expectation on their faces. However, Just when everyone thought that the seal was successful, Hyojin in the sealing barrier suddenly smiled and turned into a purple flame. Ziyuan was immediately stunned. Just a clone. Sasuke, who had fallen to the ground in the distance, widened his eyes because he recognized the purple flame that Hyojin had displayed. It was the Kekkai Genkai developed by his teacher, Uchiha Flames, the only purple flame in the ninja world. In an instant, the demonic flame swallowed the barrier wall and broke through the seal. Ziyuan, who was staring at the demonic purple flame, suddenly had a dull look in her eyes, as if she had fallen into an illusion. Not good! Xianglin, who was watching from afar, exclaimed and immediately launched 10,000 mammoths of nature, trying to pull Ziyuan, who had fallen into the illusion, to her side, and then find a way to remove the illusion for Ziyuan. Swish! But at this moment, Hyojin's figure flashed and suddenly appeared in front of Xianglin. So fast! Xianglin, who was casting the pupil technique, was taken aback because her Rinnegan didn't capture Hyojin's movements at all, so she subconsciously dodged and retreated. Hyojin raised his hand and instantly launched Rain Pull, sucking Xianglin into his hand and twisting her. The remaining Otsutsuki samurai didn't care too much at this time and directly rushed forward, trying to rescue Xianglin, but before he could rush over, he was trapped by a seal ring halfway. How could this be? Otsutsuki samurai looked at Ziyuan in surprise, because the person who had cast the technique to trap him was not someone else, but Ziyuan, who had fallen into Hyojin's illusion. And because Ziyuan was his companion, Otsutsuki samurai was not prepared, so he was easily trapped. There was no earth-shattering battle, nor was there a stalemate. In just a few breaths, the battle was over. The 5 shadow guards, who were full of confidence, didn't even have time to show all their moves before they were easily defeated by Hyojin one by one. After looking around at the crowd, Hyojin put down Xianglin, who was twisted in his hand, and said lightly, "Do you have any misunderstandings about bloodline entanglement?" Not only were they ashamed, but they also had a deeper understanding of the strength of bloodline entanglement, Hyojin's bloodline entanglement. Obviously, bloodline entanglement not only mastered a stronger and more terrifying technique, but also the use of ordinary techniques was more strange and unpredictable. Therefore, they needed to be extremely careful when facing bloodline entanglement, and a slight carelessness could lead to a disaster. Hyojin secretly shook his head. "I'm really too impatient to let these little guys be my sparring partners." He originally wanted to use the 5 shadow guards to train himself, but after the battle, he found that the gap between the two sides was bigger than he had imagined. The little guys of the shadow guards were still too immature compared to him. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 14:14. However, Hyojin has no other choice. Now in the shinobi world, the only ones who have the potential to be his sparring partner are these few guys from the Shadow Guards. After letting out a sigh, Kuroda started commenting. First, he looked at Sasuke, who fell on the ground, and said, "You are too confident attacking alone, but if your offensive can't cause enough pressure to the enemy, then your behavior is very reckless." Sasuke nodded his head in understanding. Just now, he didn't expect Hyojin's counterattack at all, and he didn't think of a good way to deal with it. Now that he thinks about it, the tactic of attacking alone is indeed a bit too reckless. Hyojin looked at Naruto and Tanato again and said, "You two have been waiting for the right opportunity to attack, but in a battle with the strong, opportunities can't come by just waiting. You have to find ways to create opportunities, and the opportunities that you wait for are often just traps set by the enemy." Naruto scratched his head, and Tanato fell into thought. Then, Hyojin looked at Ziyuan, who has been released from the genjutsu, and said, "Your adaptability is too poor." Ziyuan suddenly lowered her head with a guilty conscience. Just now, she actually had a bad feeling in her heart, but she felt that the purple flame was too gorgeous, so she looked at it curiously, but she didn't expect to fall into a genjutsu. Finally, Hyojin's eyes moved to Xianglin, who was beside him. Why is your first choice when the enemy approaches? You are too unconfident with your physique. Combined with the Uzumaki clan's sealing technique, a head-on battle should be your advantage. Xianglin said weakly, I'm sorry to disappoint you. Unlike the overconfident Sasuke, Xianglin is very unconfident in close combat, and she always subconsciously keeps a distance and uses pupillary techniques to fight. But in fact, for her, close combat should be her advantage. To her, close combat should be her advantage. Remember this, all of you. Even though you have the power of a 6 Daos level, you are still far from being a true 6 Daos level. So don't try to fight a 6 Daos level elite by yourself. Restrain your pride and learn to work together to have a chance of winning. Changing the topic, Hyojin continued, you may encounter other Otsutsuki clan invading the shinobi world in the future, and when facing the unfamiliar Otsutsuki clan, I can give you another suggestion. Naruto quickly asked, what suggestion? Hyojin smiled. Use the shadow clone technique more often. Although the shadow clone jutsu is not a high-end technique, its effect in battle is far better than ordinary ninjutsu, especially when dealing with the Otsutsuki clan with all kinds of strange abilities. The shadow clone jutsu can often play a miraculous effect. This was demonstrated when Naruto faced Otsutsuki Kagaya. Shadow clone jutsu? The few of them lowered their heads and thought about Hyojin's suggestion. At this time, Hyojin waved his hand. Okay, you go to the side and rest. We will start the next round of special training in 20 minutes. Yes. The 5 members of the Shadow Guards bowed to Hyojin in unison, then walked to a distance and gathered together to discuss. Sensei's speed is too fast. We can't split up too much or we won't be able to support each other in time. Someone must use high-intensity physical combat to hold Master back so that the others have a chance to attack. One person definitely won't be able to hold him back, at least 3 people. Also, be careful of the Flying Thunder God technique. Master can suppress the fluctuations of chakra and quietly inscribe the Flying Thunder God technique anywhere, so we have to be extra careful every time we come into contact. Also, be careful of the illusion. The purple flame just now is a very terrifying blood elimination, which is even better than my Amaterasu. It's not convenient for me to go into too much detail, but you just have to remember that even I don't dare to look directly at the purple flame. Under the strong pressure of Hyojin, the few youths who were not very familiar with each other quickly accepted each other, learned from each other's strengths, and seriously thought about tactics. The next few drills were still one-sided by Hyojin, but it was different from the first time. The more time passed, the more surprises the little guys gave Hyojin. And as time went on, after a week, the Shadow Guards who had been defeated countless times gradually made Hyojin recognize Shinichi a little. After another day of special training, Hyojin led the exhausted Shadow Guards back to the village. At this time, Kakashi suddenly found him and led him to an underground cell in the original root base. When Hyojin arrived, Jiraiya, Tsunade, Itachi, and the other higher-ups were already waiting outside the cell. Hyojin asked casually, "Is she inside?" "Yes." Jiraiya nodded in agreement. Hyojin glanced inside through the cell door and asked immediately, "What's the situation?" Jiraiya explained, "This evening, Conan suddenly broke into the village's prison for felons, and was then captured by the investigation team led by Itachi. Obviously, the person imprisoned in the cell was none other than the original member of the Akatsuki, one of Jiraiya's disciples, Conan. Prison for felons? Hyojin paused and asked, "Don't tell me she thinks we caught Nagato?" Jiraiya sighed helplessly, "I'm afraid so. Open the door." After instructing the Umbu on the side to open the cell door, Hyojin and a group of Mai's higher-ups walked in. In the cell, Conan was locked up by torture tools engraved with sealing techniques, but her mood seemed to be stable. Seeing Hyojin and the others come in, she looked at them. Hyojin looked at Conan up and down, then said, "Nagato is not in our hands." Conan nodded. There was no doubt that after making a scene in Mai's prison, she already knew that Nagato did not fall into Mai's hands. Hyojin said, "In fact, we are looking for Nagato just like you. Do you have any clues? Why do you think we caught Nagato?" After hesitating for a moment, Conan took out a paper crane and handed it to Hyojin. The Umbu in charge of guarding was shocked when he saw this. He had clearly checked before and confiscated all of Conan's ninja tools and detonation talismans. He never thought that Conan would dare to hide a detonation talisman on her body. Hyojin didn't care too much. After taking the paper crane that was folded from the detonation talisman, he unfolded the detonation talisman and found that the word Mai was written on the back. Conan said, "This is the last message Nagato sent me. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you everyone." Chapter 14-15. Mai. Hyojin frowned slightly. If he had seen this message for the first time, he would have thought that Nagato had been attacked by Mai, just like Conan. However, as Naruto, no one knew better than him that Mai had not captured Nagato. So after thinking about it, he guessed that the purpose of Nagato's message to Conan was not to let Conan come to Mai to rescue him, but to let Conan report to Mai. At this time, Jiraiya and the others also came over and saw the two words, Mai, on the back of the detonation talisman in Hyojin's hand. This is Nagato's warning? Like Hyojin, Jiraiya also reacted instantly. Tsunade wondered, then what is he trying to warn us about? Itachi on the side, supported his chin with his hand and calmly analyzed. Nagato is an expert who can fight with a six-path immortal. He left a warning message, which means that he is not sure that he can escape unscathed. He chose to warn our Mai, which means that he thinks that the other party is enough to threaten our Mai. No, it should be that he thinks that the other party is enough to threaten Naruto-sama, so he needs to warn us. Can threaten Kuroto? Kakashi looked surprised. He had seen Hyojin seal Otsutsuki Kagaya with his own eyes, so in his mind, Hyojin's strength had exceeded his imagination. Itachi said, "Maybe Nagato doesn't know the strength of Naruto-sama, but the enemy he met must have given him a lot of pressure, which made him misjudge that the other party can threaten Naruto-sama." Jiraiya added, "Nagato fought with Uchiha Obsidian, so he should be very clear about the strength of a sage, so the other party is at least a six-path sage." Tsunade put her hand on her forehead and said, "The matter with the Akatsuki has just been settled. How can there be such a troublesome enemy in the shinobi world?" Kakashi looked at Hyojin and asked, "Kuroto, what do you think?" Hyojin pondered for a moment and said, "If this enemy has been hiding in the shinobi world, then why didn't he make a move before? Why did he provoke me after I appeared in the shinobi world? Don't you think this is very abnormal?" After a pause, Hyojin continued, "And why did he attack Nagato?" Jiraiya immediately understood. Could it be that the enemy is targeting Nagato's eyes? Conan suddenly frowned. After Nagato was stimulated by the Grell mine, the strong yang release chakra in his body has been improved again, leading to unknown mutations in his temporarily transplanted Byakugan. And the whole process Conan, who has been by Nagato's side, experienced it personally. Therefore, Conan is very clear that the mutated Byakugan of Nagato is very powerful. In terms of insight alone, it is not inferior to the Rinnegan of Madara Uchiha. Therefore, if the enemy is targeting Nagato's eyes, Conan will not be surprised at all. Hyojin activated his Tenseigan and asked Conan, "Did Nagato awaken my Tenseigan?" Conan stared at Hyojin's Tenseigan, then shook her head. "It's not the same." Strange. After a pause, Hyojin thought, can Byakugan awaken other eyes besides Sharingan, Rinnegan, and Tenseigan? Thinking of this, Kuroto said to Conan, "I'm sorry." After that, he put one hand into Conan's chest, took out Conan's memory light ball, and directly browsed the process of Nagato awakening in Conan's memory. After a while, Hyojin returned the memory light ball and sighed. It can directly see and interfere with space. This pair of eyes is not simple. Inside a different space. Brush pieces of black pixels quickly folded, and in the blink of an eye, a deep space door was opened. Immediately afterward, Kupura, carrying a red fishing rod artifact, walked out of the space door, looked at the palace in front of him, and chuckled, "Hey, it's really hard to find." After walking into the palace leisurely, Kupura stopped in the hall of the palace and looked at the figure sitting on the main seat of the hall with a playful face. "Oh, it's really embarrassing." At this time, sitting on the main seat of the hall is a person with bright red hair and a pair of Byakugan eyes. There is no doubt that this person is not a bystander, it is Nagato, who Mai and Conan are looking for everywhere, but strangely, Kupura, who just arrived in the ninja world, spoke to Nagato in a very familiar tone, as if they were old acquaintances who haven't seen each other for many years. Nagato, who was sitting on the main seat, was silent for a while, and after a long time said, "Kaguya betrayed us." Obviously, the person who is controlling Nagato's body at this time is not the real Nagato, but an Otsutsuki who knows both Kaguya and Kupura. Regarding Kaguya's betrayal, Kupura didn't seem to be surprised at all. "Look at you and you know it." Nagato was silent again, his face was gloomy. Kupura stepped forward and looked at Nagato with great interest, and said with a smile, "But the artifact you chose this time is quite good." Nagato looked down at his hands. "I just got this artifact not long ago, it is indeed a perfect artifact." "Perfect?" With a light snort, Okatsuki curled his lips in disdain. "This kind of physical strength is just barely qualified. It is far from perfect. It seems that you have been in this corner for too long. You have even lost your basic ability to distinguish." Nagato, who was sitting on the main seat, didn't talk nonsense and directly opened his special eyes. Kupura was startled when he saw this. The arrogance and disdain on his face were swept away, and his expression gradually became dignified. "Cleansing eye," Nagato said in a very experienced tone. "I didn't think that there would be a rare mutation like cleansing eye here, so I took the risk to seize this artifact." TSK, you are really lucky." Kupura stared at the cleansing eye in Nagato's eye sockets and clicked his tongue in wonder. After a while, he reacted. "Risk? Is this artifact Kaguya's? But I didn't feel Kaguya's chakra on the planet? Is she hiding in another dimension?" Nagato shook his head. "No, she has been defeated and sealed." Kupura chuckled. "It seems that you are not as incompetent as I thought." Nagato shook his head again. "The one who sealed Kaguya was not me." "Then who?" After a pause, Kupura asked, "Did Momoshiki and the others arrive first?" Nagato replied, "The one who sealed Kaguya is her own descendant." First update, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Chapter 14-16. Okatsuki was stunned for a while, then laughed out loud. "Ha ha ha, she was actually sealed by her own descendant, what a joke!" Nagato did not agree. His expression was still serious as he quietly looked at the laughing Okatsuki. Okatsuki stopped laughing and asked casually, "Since Kaguya has been sealed, what is there to worry about? What about her 10 tails? I need to replenish some chakra now." Traversing the starry sky, to the Kekii net, Otsutsuka Kupurashiki, was a very heavy consumption. That 10 tails should be in the hands of her descendant now. After a pause, Nagato said in a deep voice, "I haven't fully adapted to this artifact yet. If I want to reincarnate, I'm afraid it will take some time." Okatsuki's face was full of impatience. "I can't wait, I need chakra." Nagato was slightly displeased and frowned. "You don't seem to be listening to what I'm saying." Okatsuki was bored to death as he fiddled with the fishing rod artifact in his hand. "If you're referring to how you were defeated by Kaguya, I'm interested to listen carefully." Nagato shook his head. "Don't underestimate your opponent, Kaguya's descendant is far stronger than you think." Okatsuki became slightly more serious. Nagato pondered for a while and continued. My suggestion is to wait until I complete my reincarnation, then we'll appear together. Of course, it would be even better if we wait for Momoshiki. If the other party is willing to hand over Kagaya's 10 tails, I suggest that we accept him and let him manage this star chart. Okatsuki's eyes widened. Do you know what you're saying? You want me to bow my head to Kagaya's lowly descendant? Nagato looked away, his tone still calm. For us, this is the most reasonable choice. Okatsuki grinned. Looks like the shadow that Kagaya left on you is bigger than I expected. Sure, your current lowly appearance is really disgusting. Sitting on the main seat of the hall, the will residing in Nagato's body is the will of Otsutsuki Itsuki, who came to the shinobi world with Kagaya thousands of years ago. Kuroto and Kagaya came to the shinobi world with 10 tails each, and originally, they were prepared to harvest the rich nature energy of the shinobi world, but Kuroto never thought that Kagaya would sneak attack him in order to dominate the shinobi world, shattering his body. Fortunately, Huiyi didn't have enough experience and wasn't able to kill him on the spot. Thus, he was able to stay alive by residing in the body of a monk called Tenseigan. The one who had his own jubi and sneaked into the shinobi world to watch the Fourth Shinobi War is also this Otsutsuki. For thousands of years, Okatsuki has been searching the shinobi world for the perfect artifact that can support his reincarnation. Because the artifact Tenseigan is not perfect, if he directly reincarnates in the body of Tenseigan, his chakra will be seriously weakened, and may even lead to instability in his realm. However, it is obviously not easy to find a perfect artifact that can support his six-path chakra. He has been wandering in the shinobi world for thousands of years, experienced the reign of Otsutsuki Kagaya, experienced the establishment of the shinobi sect by the Sage of the Six Paths, and also experienced the bloody and chaotic warring states period, but he still hasn't found a perfect artifact. Just when he thought that he would have to continue searching, he accidentally bumped into Nagato, who was followed by Orochimaru. The cleansing eye in Nagato's eye socket immediately attracted his attention. This is an excellent artifact, so he couldn't hold back anymore and took the risk to subdue Nagato and Orochimaru. It can be said that compared to the Black Zetsu, Okatsuki, who is currently residing in Nagato's body and preparing for reincarnation, is the real ghost wandering in the shinobi world. He witnessed Otsutsuki Kagaya swallowing the fruit of chakra and achieving Kekkai net. He witnessed Otsutsuki Kagaya and the Hamura brothers sealing their mother Kagaya. He witnessed Otsutsuki Kagaya establishing the shinobi sect and sharing the chakra. He witnessed the millennium-long dispute between the Otsutsuki Indra and Otsutsuki Azura. He witnessed the establishment of the shinobi village. He witnessed the Fourth Shinobi War. Whether it is Otsutsuki Kagaya or the Sage of the Six Paths, none of them have been paying attention to the shinobi world for as long as he did. All the changes in the shinobi world have been silently observed by him. Because of this, he is different from the other Otsutsuki. He understands everything about the shinobi world, the origin of the shinobi, and the various ninjutsu developed by the shinobi. Although his strength has been growing slowly for thousands of years due to the burden of the Tenseigan, he has not succeeded in advancing to Kekkai net and is still at the peak of the Six Paths level. However, his combat skills are far superior to Kagaya's. This is why he can easily take down Nagato, Orochimaru, Medicine Master Do, and the others without leaving any traces for others to track. In fact, in the original world, Otsutsuki was able to easily defeat Naruto and Sasuke of the Six-Path realm with only simple Ijutsu techniques and Taijutsu techniques, even though it wasn't able to fight for long periods of time. In that battle, Naruto was sealed on the spot, and Sasuke was lucky to escape with injuries. If Otsutsuki had a normal body at that time, instead of the Tenseigan, which is equipped with chakra before every battle, Sasuke wouldn't even have had the chance to escape. This is different from when Momoshiki and Kinshiki attacked Mai and captured Naruto alive. Otsutsuki crushed Naruto and Sasuke in a very short period of time in a head-on battle, showing far more combat skills than Otsutsuki Kagaya. But even so, Otsutsuki still insists on his judgment. In his view, Hyojin, the descendant of Otsutsuki Kagaya, already has all the conditions to become a true Otsutsuki, so he has no intention of fighting to the death with Hyojin. This has nothing to do with dignity, it is purely a choice made after weighing the pros and cons. Because even if he obtained Nagato, a perfect weapon that can support his reincarnation, and accidentally obtained a pair of cleansing eyes, he still doesn't have the confidence to defeat Hyojin. Under such circumstances, choosing to retreat and negotiate with Hyojin is the best solution. Seeing that Otsutsuki was unmoved, Otsutsuki snorted coldly, "You have fallen." With that, Otsutsuki activated the Yomi Biraban and opened a portal to the shinobi world, while waving his hand and said, "Since you don't dare to do anything, then let me finish this hunt and clean up." Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. In addition, I would like to thank the students who gave me gifts today. Thank you everyone. Chapter 14-17. Bang bang bang, one after another, gorgeous fireworks bloomed in the sky above Mai. This Naruto's wedding, which had been prepared for more than a month, was finally held on this sunny day. Because the groom is Naruto Mai's 5th generation, and Hyojin, the strongest immortal in the shinobi world, so the scale of this wedding is unprecedented. It is no longer limited to one clan, one village, and one country. Other big countries, and even more remote small countries, have also sent a congratulatory mission to Konoha. So before the wedding was officially held, my village was already overcrowded. A large number of foreign delegations poured into Mai, including the daimyo of various big countries, the kage of various shinobi villages, and the leaders of small forces such as city lords and ninjas. For them, celebrating Hyojin's wedding is undoubtedly the best way to get closer to Hyojin, the strongest immortal in the shinobi world. And from the various rumors they received, they felt that Hyojin, the 5th generation of Mai, is likely to be the same as the 1st generation of Mai, a very pure pacifist. If it was someone else, these leaders of the shinobi world might hesitate for a while. But Konoha is different, because Konoha really did have an invincible Hokage who gave up his tailed beasts one by one, so it is not impossible for a second one to appear in Konoha. This is the reason why they dared to come to Mai to congratulate him. And the number of guests far exceeded the expected, obviously giving Mai a headache. Before the wedding was officially held, everyone had expected that the scale of Hyojin's wedding might be unprecedented, but when they saw the endless motorcade coming from all directions, blocking several main roads outside the village, everyone was still caught off guard. On the outer wall, looking at the celebration motorcade stretching out almost to the end of the field of vision, the 3 generations Tsuchikage was surprised. How can there be so many people? On the side, the 4 generations of Kazekage also had a strange look on his face. Mai is the liveliest and most prosperous village among the 5 great shinobi villages, and now Mai is even more crowded, which makes the 4 generations of Kazekage, who are used to the desolate sand Crypsis village, feel very uncomfortable. The 4 generations laying side, "Hey, the times have changed." After Mai did not show any aggression, the daimyo of the major countries, except the fire country, made a decision to reduce the military expenditure at the same time. The daimyo's reason is also very good. The shinobi world is already safe. As for the military competition with Mai, with the presence of Sage Hyojin, there is no point in investing more military expenditure. Instead of wasting money, it is better to directly reduce military expenditure. Not only the daimyos, but even many ninjas within the major shinobi villages have similar thoughts. Because after the baptism of the asymmetric war of the 4th Shinobi War, Many people clearly realized that no matter how many ordinary ninjas there are, they can't do anything to the Sage of the Six Paths, and only the Sage can compete with the Sage. Hey! The three generations Tsuchikage expression darkened, and he also sighed. It has only been 2 months since the end of the Fourth Shinobi War, but the bad signs have already appeared. It can be predicted that with the passage of time, the significance of the existence of other shinobi villages will become dimmer and dimmer under the dazzling light of the sage Hyojin. Therefore, even if Hyojin, the fifth Naruto, is the same as the first Naruto of Mai, and has no intention to invade and expand, the mere existence of Hyojin is enough to make other shinobi villages feel uneasy. More importantly, Hyojin is a sage of the Six Paths with a long lifespan. It is basically impossible to expect Hyojin to die like the first Naruto of Mai, and a first Naruto who only lived for a few decades has left an indelible psychological shadow in the hearts of all the shinobi villages, so what does a fifth Naruto who can live for hundreds or even thousands of years mean? The 4 generations of Kazekage asked weakly, when our group gradually dies, will our village still exist? The 4 generations of Laying said, let's talk about it at that time, maybe before we die of old age, our village will be finished. Inside the Mai Hall, while several Kage were sighing on the wall of the Mai Hall, the daimyo of various countries gathered together to play cards. I heard that Naruto is not the only sage in Mai. Well, I also heard similar rumors. It is said that several of Naruto's disciples are also very promising to become sages. Mai is really an outstanding place. Have you heard that Naruto is going to build a new research center? Of course, not only us, even those greedy businessmen have received the news. It is said that many people have already invested in this research center. Listening to the chatter of the daimyo, the Land of Fire daimyo waved his fan and said, "Hee, to tell you the truth, our Land of Fire has also invested in the 5th Generation Research Center." The Land of Water daimyo asked curiously, "How much did you invest?" 2 billion. After a pause, the Land of Fire daimyo smiled leisurely and said, "This is only the first phase, later we will add the second phase and even the third phase." The Land of Lightning daimyo hesitated for a moment and asked, "What is the research project of this research center?" The Land of Fire daimyo glanced sideways at the assistant beside him. The assistant hurriedly came forward and explained, Naruto-sama's research center is divided into 17 major projects, including biology, communication, transportation, electromechanical, etc., and hundreds of sub-projects. All the daimyo sucked in a breath of cold air. The research projects of the research center cover almost all fields. Coupled with the reputation of Hyojin as the strongest shinobi in the world, there is no need to worry about funds and researchers. Even if they lose money, the investors won't complain, they will just think of it as paying a protection fee to the sage. Therefore, once the research center is put into operation, it won't take long for the technology of the Land of Fire to completely crush the other major countries, further widening the gap in national strength. Soon, the Land of Water daimyo made up his mind. The establishment of the research center by Naruto is a good thing for the entire shinobi world, and the Land of Water is also willing to invest. The Land of Lightning is also willing to invest. The Land of Earth is also willing to invest. The Land of Wind is also willing to invest. With the participation of the 5 major countries, such as the Land of Hot Water, the Land of Grass, the Land of Rain, and other small countries also joined the ranks of investment. For them, this was not only a business investment, but also a declaration of goodwill towards Hyojin. Just like that, on the day of Hyojin's wedding, from the big names of the country to the small businessmen, they all invested in the research center that Hyojin was planning to set up. Tens of billions of funds, a large number of personnel and materials began to flow into Hyojin's hands from all over the ninja world. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 1418. Inside the main house of the Hyuga family. Listening to the noise outside the window, Kurodo, the bride, was nervous, and her palms were sweating. Mute, who was dressing up Kurodo, joked, "Are you that happy?" No. Kurodo blushed and said, "I'm just a little nervous. I didn't expect so many guests to come today. I heard that all the ghost houses in the village are full, and even many of the izakaya on the street have been rented out." Mute said, "Today's village is more lively than the last time when Naruto was elected. I really envy you." Kurodo, Red Bean, Shien, and others who came to join in the fun also echoed, "Yes, yes." Kurodo raised the corner of her mouth, faintly feeling proud. Although she is not a vain person, her wedding can cause a shock in the entire shinobi world, and all the famous people of the shinobi world are rushing to congratulate her. This is undoubtedly a happy event. In Hyojin's room. I didn't expect it to be so troublesome. Hyojin, who was sitting cross-legged on the floor, curled his lips. Asma said sourly, "I wish my wedding could be so grand." Kakashi was startled. "Hey, you have a girlfriend?" Asma's face suddenly turned black. "I don't want to talk to you." Guy laughed and patted Asma on the shoulder. "It's just a failed confession. It's not a big deal. We are men, and this little setback is nothing." Asma was shocked. "You? How did you know that my confession failed?" After saying that, Asma suddenly covered his mouth, realizing that he had spilled the beans. After they teased Asma for a while, Kakashi asked Hyojin, "Kurodo, there shouldn't be any problems today, right?" Guy and Asma also became serious and looked at Hyojin. Hyojin shook his head and chuckled. "I don't have the ability to predict the future. However, if someone really dares to cause trouble for me today, then I will definitely make them pay a painful price, no matter who they are." As he spoke, Hyojin slowly got up. "All right, I'll go see if Belle is ready." As a ninja who lives on the edge of the blade, the wedding is actually not too complicated. Even the Hyuga family doesn't pay too much attention to it. It's just that because Kurodo is both the patriarch of the Hyuga clan and also the Hokage of the Hyuga clan, the village added some extra ceremonies, making the originally simple wedding suddenly complicated. Soon enough, Hyojin arrived at Ryu's room. When Mute and the others saw Hyojin, they all smiled and left. After everyone in the room left, Hyojin asked, "It's almost time, are you ready?" And Kurodo took a deep breath. Hyojin smiled and said, "Don't be nervous." Kurodo said timidly, "My heart is beating so fast now, I'm really afraid that I'll make a mistake and ruin the wedding." "Even if you make a mistake, no one will laugh at you, don't worry." After a pause, Hyojin said, "You don't have to follow any rules, you can do whatever you want, you are the boss today." Kurodo smiled happily, and the tension in her heart eased a lot. As long as Hyojin is by her side, she feels that she has a backbone, and she doesn't have to worry about anything. After changing into their formal attire, Hyojin and Kurodo sat in the limousine, surrounded by a group of relatives, friends, and subordinates, and slowly drove towards the ceremony venue amidst the cheers and blessings of the villagers along the way. At this time, the venue is full of guests inside and outside. The number has reached an astonishing hundreds of thousands, and there are hundreds of ninjas maintaining the order at the scene. In the center of the venue, there is a towering ceremonial platform. When Hyojin and Kurodo arrive at the venue, they will step onto this ceremonial platform, accept the cheers and blessings of all the guests, and complete the wedding ceremony here. Swish! At this moment, with a burst of wind, Hyojin's shadow guards arrived at the venue first and guarded around the ceremonial platform. The appearance of the shadow guards immediately caused a commotion at the venue, because many people had heard that Hyojin's shadow guards also have the title of Sage Reserve Force. On the viewing platforms on both sides of the venue, Hayashi pointed to Otsutsuki Samurai, who was guarding the ceremonial platform, and said to Richa, who was next to him, "What do you think of the Akira?" Because Hayashi decisively gave up the position of the patriarch, allowing the Hyuga clan to complete the reform peacefully, Hyojin restored the Byakugan for Hayashi and let him see the light again. Richa said, "Very good." Hayashi smiled and said, "What do you think if I recruit him as my son-in-law?" "What?" Richa was taken aback. "Do you want Hinata and Akira to marry?" Hayashi nodded. "Akira is the best of the clansmen besides Kuroto. If he marries Hinata, maybe their children can also awaken the Tenseigan." Richa didn't expect that Hayashi had already started to have ideas about the next generation, and was stunned. At the other end of the viewing platform, the students gathered together, like the guests around them, were also in high spirit. Fang said, "Naruto and Sasuke are really awe-inspiring. If I can also join Naruto-sama's shadow guards, it would be great." Yeah. Ding Xiai nodded in agreement while eating his snacks. Shikamaru curled his lips. Not everyone can join the 5th generation's shadow guards. On the side, Ningxi stared at Naruto, who was guarding the stage. Sasuke clenched his fists and said to himself, "I have the dragon vein given to me by Sensei, and I have the experience of withstanding the Tenseigan. I will definitely catch up with them, definitely." Hinata, who stood side by side with Ningxi, stared happily at Naruto in the field, his face full of worship. Next to the stage, feeling the gazes of the people around them, whether it is Naruto, Sasuke, Zyuan, Xiangli, or even Otsutsuki Samurai, who doesn't care about these things the most, felt an inexplicable excitement. Sasuke, who was the proudest of them all, held his head high. At this moment, there was a tsunami of cheers outside the venue, as if the earth was shaking. Everyone on the viewing platform immediately understood that the main character of the day must have arrived, so they all stretched their heads and looked at the entrance of the venue. The 5 members of the shadow guards guarding the stage also looked serious, and they became even more vigilant. Gradually, the limousine drove into the venue, and the newlyweds, Hyojin and Kuroto Sui, slowly stepped onto the towering stage under the attention of the crowd. Swish, just as Hyojin and Kuroto Sui were about to accept the blessings of everyone, a space door suddenly appeared in the bright sky. Then, Daisuke Miura, who was carrying a fishing rod, walked out casually and glanced sideways at Hyojin on the stage. "Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you everyone." Chapter 14-19. In the cloudless clear sky, the deep space door and the Otsutsuki Kyorishiki, who walked out of the door, immediately attracted the attention of everyone in the venue. "Look at the sky. What is that? Is it a space portal? Enemy attack?" In an instant there was a lot of noise in the stands. Many ninjas in the venue had personally experienced the 4th Shinobi World War not long ago. They had seen Hyojin launch the Yomi Biraban and walk out of the space portal to save the shinobi world with his own strength. So, many people recognized the deep black hole in the air like a black pixel. It was a space portal. Unlike the ordinary people in the venue, the 5 members of the Shadow Guard were all shocked when they saw it. Others only vaguely guessed that the deep black hole in the air was a space portal, but the 5 members of the Shadow Guard knew very well that it was the Yomi Biraban, a space-time ninjutsu that could only be performed by the Kekii net above the 6th level. In other words, the mysterious person who walked out of the space portal with a red fishing rod on his shoulder was a Kekii net with the same realm as Hyojin. In an instant, the Yomi Bira floating in the air revealed the terrifying chakra fluctuations on his body. The chakra, like a gravitational wave, instantly set off a wave of air, sweeping the entire venue. The huge sandstorm made everyone in the venue unable to open their eyes. "Who the hell is that guy? How dare he challenge Naruto? Is he crazy? Damn it!" Panic, shock, and other emotions quickly spread in the hearts of the people. No one expected to participate in the wedding of the strongest ninja in the world to encounter such an absurd thing. At this moment, Yomi Bira shook the fishing rod in his hand, stared at Hyojin and said frivolously, "Hey, descendant of Kagaya, hand over the jubi." On the stage, Yui was shocked and looked at Hyojin nervously. Kuroto, is he Otsutsuki? Hyojin smiled gently. Don't worry, I'm here. After comforting Hyuga a little, Hyojin turned his head and looked at Daikawa Mashiro in the sky, and as he turned his head, the softness on his face was replaced by a touch of coldness. The corner of Otsutsuka Kiura's mouth drew back. He leisurely smiled and said, Hey, a mere bloodline descendant actually has this kind of chakra. It's not as unbearable as I thought. Looks like Ishur was right, we can't treat you like a lowly monkey. One move? Hyojin's eyes narrowed. Kuroto had an impression of this Urashiki. In his memory, from the end of the Fourth Shinobi War until Naruto got married and had children, the three Urashiki, Momoshiki, and Kinshiki had visited the shinobi world. However, Kuroto has no impression of the one move mentioned by Urashiki, and from the tone of Urashiki's voice, he can tell that this one move seems to know him very well. And with Urashiki's words to Hyojin, everyone in the venue immediately speculated the identity of Urashiki, because other than the members of the Otsutsuki family, it is impossible for anyone else in the shinobi world to call the ancestor of Chakra Kagaya in such a casual tone. Kakashi was shocked. Is he the same as Otsutsuki Kagaya, an Otsutsuki from the universe? Jiraiya said to the three generations Naruto next to him, Old man, get ready to evacuate the crowd. The other party is at the same level as Kuroto, and his means are completely unknown, we have to prepare for the worst. On the side, Tsunade was also ready to print hand seals. Once the war starts, she will immediately summon the slugs from the Shikatsu forest to reduce the casualties in the venue. After all, there are not only a large number of my villagers gathered in the venue at the moment, but also the daimyo of various countries. On the other side, the expression of the three generations Tsuchikage greatly changed, and immediately sighed, It's only been a few days. The four generations of Kazekage asked, Should we intervene? The four generations Laying, who has always been fearless, shook his head and said, There is no room for us to intervene in such a war, let's find a way to save our lives first. The four generations of Kazekage sighed helplessly, Hey, the shinobi world is going to usher in another catastrophe. Whoosh, at this time, the five members of the Shadow Guard jumped on the stage together and said in unison, Sama, let us go first. The idea of the five of them is very simple. In the face of an unfamiliar Kekii net, information is very important, so they want to obtain information for Hyojin through their own battle. After all, they can lose, they can die, but Hyojin can't lose. Not only the Shadow Guard, the Umbu in the venue, the Mai ninjas who maintain the order, and even the guests all looked at Hyojin anxiously at this moment. The current Hyojin is not only the Naruto of Mai, but also the guarantee of the free will of the entire shinobi world. If Hyojin, the strongest sage in the shinobi world, is defeated, then the shinobi world can only be trampled on. In the eyes of the Shadow Guard, Hyojin lightly said, You guys protect you. The five members of the Shadow Guard were all startled. Sama, you want to take action personally? Kuroto. You also clenched Hyojin's arm tightly. Hyojin gently stroked Yu's hand. Don't worry, I will be back soon, no one can disturb my wedding. In the air. Looking down at the venue, Okumura saw the fear on the faces of the people in the venue, and immediately snorted, Hey, my patience is limited. Whoosh, before Itsuka Motoshi could finish his words, Suijin, who was standing on the ceremonial platform, appeared in front of him. What? Okumura's pupils dilated instinctively. He did not expect Hyojin to act so decisively, and his speed was so fast, completely beyond his insight. Suijin didn't even say a word of superfluous nonsense. He directly pinched Otsutsuki Urashiki's face with his palm, and then like a rainbow, he dragged the defenseless Otsutsuki Urashiki away, disappearing into the sky in the blink of an eye. The people in the venue, who had been prepared to bear the impact of the battle, were all stunned and speechless for a long time. They thought that this would be an earth-shattering battle of life and death related to the survival of the shinobi world, but they did not expect Hyojin to instantly suppress the mysterious Okamura from the universe and forcibly change the battlefield. After a while, Tsunade, who was ready to make a seal with her hands, looked at the 3 generations and Jiraiya awkwardly. What should we do next? The 3 generations looked in the direction of Hyojin's departure. There is nothing we can do except wait. The first update is here, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Chapter 1420. In just a moment, Suijin dragged the Otsutsuka Mokushiki and flew for hundreds of kilometers, arriving at a remote wasteland, and then threw the Otsutsuka Mokushiki in his hand. Rumble in an instant, Otsutsuki was like a cannonball, smashing hard on the ground, making a roar. Hyojin followed closely behind and also landed on the ground. Then, he opened the Tenseigan with a cold expression. While entering the Tenseigan chakra mode, he walked towards Otsutsuki, who had smashed a big pit on the ground. "You damn guy, how dare you offend me like this?" Otsutsuki climbed out of the big pit with a ferocious face. He never thought that as a Kekii net, he would experience such a mess. Gathering the truth-seeking jade in his palm, Hyojin walked towards Otsutsuki and said indifferently, "How dare you make trouble at my wedding? Isn't it good to live?" The expression on Otsutsuki's face froze, and he immediately became furious. "You lowly monkey, how dare you despise me?" After saying that, he waved the red fishing rod in his hand. Swish! Hyojin's figure flashed, easily avoiding the fishing rod that Otsutsuki waved. At the same time, the 9 truth-seeking jade gathered in his palm instantly condensed together, turning into a dazzling golden sword. Damn it! Damn it! Failing to strike, the angry and ashamed Daisuke Kapura frantically waved the fishing rod in his hand. The fishing line that could be extended and contracted at will was like a big net, covering the sky and covering the earth towards Suijin. Swish! Hyojin flashed again. The golden sword in his hand was as dazzling as the sun, and a bright golden light flashed. With the flash of golden light, Otsutsuki's right arm that was holding the fishing rod also flew into the air, and then fell to the ground with a plop. How is this possible? Otsutsuki, who had his arm cut off, was stunned, and a trace of confusion flashed in his eyes. He had never thought that he would be injured, let alone that he would be injured so suddenly. He didn't even have time to react. Hyojin, who had passed by, slowly turned around, his expression still cold. Kapura Shiki, who was covering his wound, suddenly had his chakra swell, and the whites of his eyes turned into a pair of blue Rinnegan eyes that Hyojin had never seen before. He said fiercely, "You're dead today. I'm going to suck your chakra dry, refine you into a pill, and swallow you in one gulp." Swish! Hyojin did not waste any time. He teleported again, and the golden sword in his hand slashed down. However, this time, Hyojin's swift and fierce sword only managed to cut through the corner of Ataru Mokushiki's clothes, and failed to cut off Ataru Mokushiki's other arm as he wished. Kuroda let out a slight sigh. At the moment of the confrontation, with his speed, insight, and even experience, he thought that this sword would hit, but he did not expect Ataru Mokushiki to avoid it. And during the confrontation, he noticed a detail. That was, at the moment when he waved his sword, Ataru Mokushiki's strange blue Rinnegan eyes flashed. Hohu, on the other side, Ataru Mokushiki, who had narrowly avoided Hyojin's sword, gasped heavily, and his face was full of horror. Just now, Hyojin's sword really scared him. One must know that his Rinnegan eyes had the strange ability to go back in time and peek into the future. Using this ability, he predicted the timing and angle of Hyojin's sword in advance, but he was still almost cut. Chakra is obviously on par with me. How can this guy be so strong? After a pause, Ataru Mokushiki looked embarrassed. Damn, why didn't that bastard Ichishiki tell me clearly? This feeling is a bit like Shinichi's time stopping house. After thinking about it, Hyojin's thoughts turned, and he asked Ataru Mokushiki expressionlessly, "Did you just go back in time? You?" Ataru Mokushiki's expression suddenly changed, and his heart was filled with horror. Time interference is the proudest ability of this Kekii net, but he didn't expect that it would be seen through by Suijin the first time he used it. This made him feel an unprecedented sense of crisis in his heart. Hyojin was just bluffing, but at this moment, after seeing Ataru Mokushiki's expression, he immediately knew that he had guessed correctly, so he said coldly, "You can go back in time, and you were almost cut by me. I'm very curious, how did you survive until now?" Ataru Mokushiki, who had a broken arm, secretly glanced at the broken arm and the fishing rod magic weapon that fell not far away, and his heart had already sprouted the idea of retreat. The number of planets destroyed by him is far more than one, but the ones he slaughtered were all aborigines with no strength. He has never met a strong ninja of the same level, let alone a ninja like him who specializes in combat and can exert the power of Kekii net to the extreme. Seeing Hyojin approaching again with his sword, Ataru Mokushiki took a step back. We are of the same race, and I recognize you. Let's talk." Hyojin was unmoved. "If it were any other time, I wouldn't mind talking to you, but you dared to make trouble at my wedding, so?" Ataru Mokushiki asked eagerly, "So what?" Whoosh, Hyojin's figure flashed again, and the golden wheel reincarnation explosion in his hand instantly cut down at an unprecedented tricky angle, and his mouth said lightly, "So please go to hell." Ataru Mokushiki once again activated the ability of the Rinnegan, peeping into the future. Puff, a flower of blood splattered, and Ataru Mokushiki's chest was cut into a long, deep wound that could see the bone. Just a little bit more, and he would have been completely cut open. Damn it! Okatsuki Urashiki was terrified. He once again confirmed that even if he could peek into the future, there was no possibility of defeating Kuroto when he was missing an arm and had lost his magical weapon. No, he didn't even have the ability to protect himself. Hiss, at this time, in a burst of steam, the wound on Ataru Mokushiki's chest slowly healed, but the broken arm did not recover, so he quickly launched the 10,000 mammoth attraction towards the broken arm on the ground in the distance, trying to suck the broken arm and the fishing rod magic weapon on the ground over. Hyojin waved his hand, and the repulsive force of rain wheel pull was suddenly released, sending the broken arm and the fishing rod magic weapon that had just risen from the ground flying far away. Ataru Mokushiki's face darkened. "I am not the only one who came to clean up Kaguya this time. Aren't you afraid of our revenge?" Whoosh, in the sharp sound of the wind breaking, Hyojin flashed in front of Ataru Mokushiki, and the golden sword in his hand pierced Ataru Mokushiki's chest. He said, "Is that so? Then I don't have to be merciful, I can directly execute you." Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you everyone. Chapter 14:21. Feeling the piercing pain in his chest and the numbing burning sensation, Otsutsuki's blue samsara eye glared angrily. Amidst the shock and anger, there was a hint of fear. As an almost immortal Kekii net, he had always been the one to destroy and plunder. He had never thought that one day he would become someone else's hunting target. He had never thought that he would be defeated so thoroughly and in such a sorry state. In a battle of the same realm, he had no power to resist. I might really die here. In an instant, such a ridiculous idea suddenly came to his mind. In a sense, Kekii Genkai net is indeed immortal, because the essence of Kekii Genkai net is not flesh and blood, nor is it a spirit body attached to flesh and blood, but a highly condensed chakra that has undergone a qualitative change. As long as this special chakra was not completely destroyed, the Kekii net would not die completely. Chakra was ever-changing and existed in any form. Therefore, it was very difficult to completely destroy a Kekii net chakra. But just because it was difficult didn't mean it was impossible. Especially when the opponent was a Kekii net of the same level. Go to hell. Go to hell. Go to hell. The great fear made Otsutsuki roar out. At the same time, Kurodo desperately broke out a terrifying chakra, circle after circle of invisible repulsive force, as if a substance, like a turbulent wave, poured out indiscriminately in all directions. Rumble in an instant the earth shook. As this terrifying repulsive force swept out in all directions, the ground in the wasteland where both sides were fighting was lifted up into the air. If one were to look from above, it would seem as if someone had lifted the lid off the boundless wasteland. With just one blow, the terrain was unrecognizable. The power of the Kekii net was fully displayed. In the underground command center of my village. Staring at the completely deformed perceptive water ball, Kakashi asked the perceptive class, "How is it?" The ninja from the perception class stuttered, The location of the battle seems to be in the Wind Nation. 3 generations. Naruto asked, "What about the situation? Who has the upper hand now?" After 3 generations, Naruto finished his question. All the senior members of the 5 great shinobi villages stared at the ninjas of the perception class, waiting for the answer. This feeling of not being able to do anything and only being able to wait for the results to be revealed was too uncomfortable for these higher-ups who were used to controlling the situation. Moreover, the outcome of this battle is not only related to Hyojin, but also related to the entire shinobi world, so they are very eager to know the situation on the battlefield at this moment. The ninja from the perception class said helplessly, "We can only perceive the fluctuations of chakra on the battlefield, we can't judge the situation for the time being." 4 generations laying asked, "What is the condition of your chakra waves?" The ninja from the perception class blurted out, "Very strong." 3 generations. Tsuchikage-sama frowned, "Be more specific." The ninja from the perception class thought for a moment, "Very strong." There is no doubt that the intensity of chakra sensed by the perception class is far beyond the small skills they summarized in the past to identify the fluctuations of chakra, so there is no way for them to analyze and describe it. On the battlefield, the huge smoke and dust still covered the sky. Kupura Shiki, who had lost an arm, was gasping for breath while staring in one direction with cold sweat on his face. And in the smoke and dust, a dazzling light was slowly approaching him. Obviously, Kupura Shiki's explosion just now, although it destroyed the entire ecological circle of the battlefield and completely destroyed the terrain, but for Hyojin, who is also a Kekii trap, it didn't hurt him at all. And for Hyojin, whose ability to control his body is getting better and better, an explosion like Kupura Shiki just now is simply a meaningless act of wasting chakra. At this time, Hyojin, holding the highly condensed golden wheel reincarnation explosion, which is only 1 meter long, penetrated the smoke and snorted lightly. "You claim to be a god, but when you panic, you don't seem to be much better than a monkey." Kupura Shiki roared, "You damn bastard, I am also a Kekii trap, don't underestimate me." Hyojin coldly said with a sigh, "Yes, before I fought with you, I really didn't think that Kekii trap could be so weak." Kupura Shiki's expression froze. Hyojin didn't stop walking. "You will be the first Kekii trap to die in my hands. You are just a lowly descendant with the blood of Kagaya, just a native living in the mud, a low-level monkey like you can't understand the greatness of our Kupura clan." After Kupura Shiki said this, the blue Rinnegan in his eye sockets suddenly changed, turning into a red Rinnegan with 6 Magatama each. At the same time, pieces of black pixels suddenly appeared behind him, folded and opened. In just an instant, a space door to the unknown depths was opened. "Want to escape?" Hyojin snorted softly, and the eye of the moon with 9 Magatama in between his eyebrows instantly opened. "You actually?" Staring at the demonic eye of the moon in between Hyojin's eyebrows, Kupura Shiki was shocked. Unable to care much, he hurriedly jumped back, trying to escape into the space door. However, at the moment when Kupurashiki was about to escape into the space door, as Hyojin's Eye of the Moon's eye power erupted, the black pixel-like squares that opened the space barrier quickly disappeared, and the space door closed instantly. Swish! The space door that closed instantly was like a sharp space-time blade, almost cutting the upper half of Kupurashiki's body that had jumped into the space door. Even though he managed to dodge the attack, Daikawa Mashiro's shoulder was still slashed with a frightening wound so deep that the bone could be seen. This was only because he was a Kekii net. If it was someone else, they would have been dead. Kupurashiki, who was wounded all over, was terrified. He really did not expect Hyojin to be able to open the eye between his eyebrows that he could only open in his second form. That bastard Ishiki, he must have done it on purpose. That damned descendant of Kagaya is so strong, but he didn't tell me clearly. Feeling the Eye of the Moon in between Hyojin's eyebrows that was filled with killing intent, Kupurashiki was frightened. Obviously, in the battle just now in Yoki no Hiraiban, the pair of 6 Magatama Rinnegan in his eye sockets was defeated by the 9 Magatama Eye of the Moon in between Hyojin's eyebrows. At this time, the Tenseigan in Hyojin's eye sockets suddenly bloomed with a dazzling light, and then, the extremely condensed golden wheel reincarnation explosion in his hand, which was only 1 meter long, was shortened to half a meter again. Even with the 6 Magatama Rinnegan, Kupurashiki felt that it was extremely dazzling, and could not look directly at the golden sword in Hyojin's hand at all. He was horrified in his heart. If I am cut, I will definitely die. The first update is here, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Chapter 1422. The dazzling light dispersed all the smoke around it, as if what Hyojin was holding in his hand was not a golden sword, but a real blazing and dazzling sun. I will die. The shock instantly turned into fear, and Okumura-shiki did not dare to wait for Hyojin to make a move. He immediately changed the 6 Magatama Rinnegan in his eye sockets back to the special blue Rinnegan. As a Kekii net, he had mastered more than one escape technique, Yomi Hirasaka. After transforming into the blue Rinnegan, Okumura-shiki shouted at Hyojin, "You wait for me." He was about to leave some harsh words and escape, but when he saw Hyojin suddenly take a step, he didn't even have time to finish his harsh words. He didn't dare to wait for Hyojin to make a move, so he hurriedly launched a life-saving secret technique. Hua! In an instant, Okumura-shiki's body turned into a small paper crane that emitted red fluorescence and scattered. Hyojin's eyes suddenly turned cold, and the Tenseigan and Eye of the Moon were launched at the same time, tracking each paper crane. However, these paper cranes that flew away quickly disappeared without a trace, as if they had never existed. Whoosh! Hyojin's figure flashed, and he came to the place where Okumura-shiki disappeared. Space-time ninjutsu? From the residual chakra fluctuations around, Hyojin instantly judged that Okumura-shiki had just used some kind of space-time ninjutsu that he did not understand. Want to escape? It's not that easy. After a cold snort, the Eye of the Moon, between Hyojin's eyebrows, suddenly emitted a strange red light. As long as there were traces of space-time ninjutsu on the scene, whether it was the space-time ninjutsu that Hyojin knew or not, it could not escape the tracking of the Eye of the Moon between his eyebrows. Swish! Okumura-shiki flashed and appeared on the sea hundreds of miles east of the Wind Country battlefield. He was injured and extremely embarrassed, but he did not immediately use space-time ninjutsu to escape. Instead, he looked at the sea below and whispered, "When I used my pupil power just now, I sensed the position here. It should be right." After that, Okumura-shiki returned to the Byakuya state, and then opened the state of X-ray vision to sweep the bottom of the sea. After a while, he focused on one place and said happily, "Found it." Poof! He couldn't care much. He covered the wound of his broken arm and plunged into the sea. and a moment later, he rushed out from the bottom of the sea with an object that looked like a clay jar and landed on a small island nearby. After unlocking the seal on the earthen jar, Mizushi shouted excitedly, "Hurry up and wake up, Lee!" A bright light flashed and the clay pot turned into a pink little tortoise. It slowly extended its head and said in a mechanical voice, "Authentication passed. I'm a relic, plow." Okumura Shiki smirked. It really is the relic that Huiyi took away." At that moment, the relic named Plow continued, "Honorable Okumura Shiki, please allow me to introduce you to the things to pay attention to when using it. Damn it! Don't talk nonsense. Shut up." After shouting, Okumura Shiki's expression became ferocious again. "Activate it now. Quick, quick." The relic, Plow, said, "Please inject chakra." Okumura Shiki's face darkened as he injected his own chakra into the relic, Plow. In an instant, the body of the relic, Plow, emitted a golden light. Then, the golden light turned into a golden ball of light. Okumura Shiki, who had a broken arm, walked into the ball of light impatiently and shouted, "Quick! Open the space-time tunnel. I want to go back to the past." "As you wish." The relic, Plow, responded and then said in a mechanical tone, "Let me remind you again. If you maliciously tamper with the past, you will suffer unexpected bad luck. So, please be careful." Okumura Shiki glared at Plow fiercely. "Shut up. I know all of this." There was no doubt that this relic named Plow was the relic of the Otsutsuki clan that was brought to the ninja world by Kaguya. Its function was very simple, which was to travel through time and space. When he was fighting with Hyojin, Okumura Shiki unleashed his ocular power and accidentally sensed Plow. Therefore, he used Plow, the relic of the Otsutsuki clan, to travel to the past and eliminate Hyojin when he was weak. This was because Hyojin was too powerful. He, who was also a Kekii trap, even lost the courage to face Hyojin again. Seeing that the space-time tunnel had opened, Okumura Shiki waited for the relic to travel and said coldly, "You're just a lowly descendant of the bloodline. How dare you look down on me and humiliate me? Just you wait, I will let you know the horror of the Otsutsuki clan. Humph, you are strong now, but it doesn't mean that you will be as strong in the past." "Is that so?" Just as Okumura Shiki was fantasizing about how to humiliate the weak Hyojin after traveling back to the past, a cold voice faintly sounded in his ears. Okumura Shiki was shocked and turned his head abruptly. He found that a space door suddenly appeared not far behind him, and Hyojin, who he didn't want to see the most, slowly walked out of it. How is this possible?" Okumura Shiki was shocked. He kept urging Plow, because he knew that Hyojin would definitely be able to track him, but he didn't expect that Hyojin could directly break the barrier of the relic and invade the space-time tunnel created by Plow. Where is this?" Hyojin did not immediately launch an attack. Instead, he was attracted by the colorful streamers in the space-time tunnel because his Tenseigan captured many of these scenes that happened in the shinobi world in the past. Okumura Shiki, who was so shocked that he almost exploded, did not dare to continue to stay in the space-time tunnel. While Hyojin's attention was attracted by the space-time tunnel, he jumped without hesitation and rushed into a streamer in a panic. Seeing that Okumura Shiki jumped and disappeared in the space-time tunnel, Hyojin's eyes turned cold. At this time, the relic Plow said, "The authentication is approved. I am the descendant of the noble Otsutsuki Kaguya. I am the relic Plow. Please allow me to introduce to you the precautions when using it." The relic's inspection function quickly determined Hyojin's noble identity as an upper-class Otsutsuki clan. The authentication was completed in an instant, and the relic introduced the usage and precautions to Hyojin. After listening to the explanation of Plow carefully, Hyojin stared at the pink little tortoise in front of him with a strange expression. Time travel? It was not that the matter of time travel had never happened in the shinobi world. Naruto in the original space-time had accidentally traveled back to the past with the help of the turbulence of the dragon vein. It was just that Hyojin did not expect the technology of the Otsutsuki clan to be so advanced that they could actually create a relic that could accurately travel through time. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you everyone. Chapter 1423. This relic was brought to the ninja world by Otsutsuki Kagaya, which means that thousands of years ago, the Otsutsuki clan had already mastered this level of technology. As this thought came to mind, Hyojin quickly put away the pride he had from defeating the Otsutsuki Urashiki, who also possessed the Kekii net. One could tell the whole picture just by looking at one spot. Just by looking at the relic plow that had opened up the space tunnel in front of him, Hyojin could infer that the Otsutsuki clan not only had the ability to travel and colonize the galaxy, but they also had a deep understanding of the mysterious fields of time and space. In comparison, the ninja world was like a child who had just started out in this aspect. I can't underestimate the Otsutsuki clan just because of Urashiki. In the bottom of his heart, Kuroda secretly warned himself. At this time, the relic plow said, "You can choose any point in time here and travel back to the past. However, any changes you make to the past will have an unpredictable impact on the future. Please be careful." Hyojin gently nodded. He had always been cautious when he came into contact with new things that he didn't understand. Even if there was no reminder from the relic, he wouldn't act recklessly. This was the basic quality of a researcher. Suddenly, Hyojin noticed an image in the stream of light around the space tunnel. The image was none other than himself. With a thought, he picked up the pink tortoise plow and stepped into the stream of light. As the world spun, the surrounding scenery suddenly changed, and the time travel was completed in an instant. As the Kekii net, Hyojin wasn't affected by the dizziness. On the contrary, he took this opportunity to fully activate his Tenseigan and lunar eye to carefully observe the whole process of time travel. Chakra can be twisted to such an extent, it's really incredible. The more he analyzed, the more Hyojin was shocked by the plow relic. Using chakra as the cornerstone to pry open the space barrier was not difficult for Hyojin to understand. However, using chakra as the cornerstone to pry open the time tunnel was beyond Hyojin's current understanding of chakra. After collecting his scattered thoughts, Hyojin focused his attention on what was in front of him. At this time, it was already dusk, and there was only a faint trace of sunset on the horizon. In the forest not far away, a team was hurrying along, and walking at the front of the team was a white-eyed boy who looked to be only 13 or 14 years old. Unlike the rest of the team, Byakugan looked very vigilant. Even though he was panting and his chakra was not enough, he would still activate Byakugan from time to time to observe the surroundings. Heh! Hyojin, who was hiding in the distance, raised the corner of his mouth and chuckled. The young man with Byakugan who hung Mai's forehead protector on his waist and deliberately revealed the caged bird curse mark on his forehead was none other than Hyojin when he was a teenager. This time and space was the end of the Third Shinobi World War. At that time, Kuroda received a mission to escort the wounded back to Konoha through his relationship with Orochimaru and was able to stay away from the cruel frontline. But Kuroda didn't expect that this mission would be the one where he was closest to death in the entire war. Because in order to retaliate against Mai's golden flash that penetrated deep into their hinterland, Rock Village also sent an elite strike force to sneak into the hinterland of the Land of Fire. Most of Hyojin's team was injured, and most of the accompanying guards were cannon fodder Chunin like Hyojin. Even the captain was only a Tokubetsu Jonin. Plus, because they were far away from the front line and very close to the village, the team's vigilance was very low. It can be said that except for Hyojin, everyone else was still immersed in the joy of escaping from the front line. But what they didn't expect was that in the safe zone only a few dozen miles away from the village, they encountered the rock village strike force that penetrated deep into the hinterland of the Land of Fire. The encounter between the two sides happened in an instant. Hyojin, who was the leader of the strike force, retreated back into the team while warning loudly. He didn't forget to take out a signal flare from the ninja bag around his waist and shot it into the air. Whoosh, accompanied by the whistling sound of the signal flare, the battle broke out. On one side was a tired and unvigilant wounded team, and on the other side were Rock Village elites who penetrated deep into the enemy's rear and vowed to take revenge. The combat power of the two sides was not on the same level from the beginning, so the result of the battle was without suspense. Almost as soon as the two sides clashed, it became a one-sided massacre. In the distance, looking at the young man who encountered the Rock Village strike force, Hyojin, who had already achieved bloodline net and was almost immortal, couldn't help but be in a trance. Reflected in his reincarnated eyes, the young man who was constantly dodging on the battlefield with a panicked face looked so embarrassing, so humble. Really as humble as grass, Hyojin secretly sighed. At that time, even if he really died in the war, no one would care except for Bell. At most, his name would be engraved in the Soul Comfort Monument and become one of the many souls on the Soul Comfort Monument. He had given it his all just to survive. The killing on the battlefield continued, but Hyojin didn't intervene. Time travel is a completely unfamiliar field to him, and as a researcher, he won't change history without understanding the principle. And just like in history, because the young Hyojin released the signal flare first, and the battlefield was very close to the village, so when the young Hyojin was forced into a desperate situation by a Jonin from the Rock Village, and his life was hanging by a thread, the village's reincarnation arrived in time. Because the battlefield was just outside the Mai village, the Rock Village's strike force didn't entangle them. When the Mai's reincarnation arrived, they immediately withdrew from the battlefield, and most of the Mai's reincarnation directly chased after the Rock Village's strike force, leaving only a small part to clean up the battlefield. Plop, Suijin, who had just escaped from the gates of hell, slumped down on the ground, gasping for breath while staring blankly at the scene unfolding before his eyes. The entire wounded team was almost completely wiped out in a short period of contact. Only a few lucky people survived like him. A Jonin from the support team who was responsible for cleaning up the battlefield came in front of the young Hyojin, looked at the young Hyojin who was bathed in blood, and sighed. Sigh. He has seen this kind of soulless state many times in this war. Generally, it is caused by extreme fatigue or great stimulation. Some people can recover after resting for a while, but some people will become stupid and slow, never to recover. At this moment, the Jonin suddenly looked into the distance vigilantly and shouted towards Suijin, who was walking slowly towards him. Stop, who are you? The first chapter is here, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Chapter 1424. With the warning of Mai's Jonin, the other Mai ninjas who were cleaning the battlefield also shifted their vigilant eyes to Hyojin, who was slowly walking over. However, they did not immediately launch an attack, because Kuroto was wearing a gorgeous robe modified from the Hokage Meijin. Not only that, but the Tenseigan in Hyojin's eye sockets was as bright as the stars, as well as the dark red eye of the moon between his eyebrows, also frightened them so much that they did not dare to act rashly. This was the instinctive self-protection of living things. Hyojin did not care about the Mai ninjas who were cleaning the battlefield. He stared at the young man who was in a daze and thought to himself, was I in this state at that time? You? Who are you? Mai's Jonin said with a trembling voice. Being stared at by the eye of the moon, even if it was just from the corner of his eye, made him feel flustered. He instinctively wanted to turn around and escape. Hyojin came back to his senses and gently snapped his fingers. Voila! In an instant, his body was ignited with a gorgeous demonic purple flame. Immediately afterward, all the my ninjas who saw the demonic purple flame fell to the ground one by one, falling into the illusion and fainting. Only the young man, Hyojin, who was in a daze, did not faint because he was not looking at this side. After waving his hand and dispersing the purple flame on his body, Hyojin slowly walked in front of his young self. Originally, Kuroda wasn't going to show up, but considering that Otsutsuka Motoshiki had already crossed over, and he wasn't sure which time node he had crossed over to, so just in case, he decided to leave a pupillary force on his younger self as a coordinate, and set it to automatically activate once he sensed Otsutsuka Motoshiki's chakra. At that time, he could accurately descend to any time he encountered Okatsuki based on this coordinate. This was because he had confirmed through the plow relic that even if it was Kekkei net, it could not frequently travel through time because it involved the anchoring of oneself and time. Frequent travel would cause oneself to be lost, and travel required the assistance of a relic. Now that the plow was in his hands, it was impossible for Okatsuki to travel again. According to the time when Okatsuki left the spacetime tunnel, the time node of Okatsuki's travel was later than Hyojin's. Therefore, as long as Hyojin, who had traveled to an earlier time, made arrangements in advance, he could prevent Okatsuki's malicious attacks against him at any time node in the future. Of course, the plow also emphasized that even if Hyojin did not make any preparations, it would be difficult for Okatsuki to threaten him. This was because forcibly changing history would result in a backlash from the timeline's correction. The more things changed, the larger the scope affected, and the more severe the backlash would be. In theory, if one wanted to get rid of a Kekkei net by traveling through time and space, the price would be unimaginably high. Just as Hyojin was about to cast an ocular skill on his teenage self, the teenage Hyojin suddenly woke up from his daze and looked at him in surprise. Facing his teenage self's gaze, Hyojin, who was reminded of all kinds of memories, was in a trance again. Swoosh! Suddenly, the teenage Hyojin launched a surprise attack on Hyojin. A standard set of soft punches came, creating a strong wind. The dazed Hyojin turned his body slightly and easily avoided his teenage self's attack. Hiss! Hiss! At that moment, the sound of a detonating talisman was heard. Hyojin glanced at it from the corner of his eye and realized that his teenage self had stuck a detonating talisman on the corner of his clothes when he launched a surprise attack. Ha ha ha! Looking at the detonating talisman on the corner of his clothes that had been ignited and was about to explode, Hyojin was stunned at first and then laughed heartily. Boom! In an instant, the detonating talisman was detonated, making a huge roar. Young Hyojin stared at the smoke and dust in front of him and murmured, "Just now? Was that the Tenseigan and the Eye of the Moon? How is that possible? How can there be such a person in the ninja world? It shouldn't be." The smoke and dust quickly dissipated, and Hyojin's unscathed figure was revealed. Young Hyojin stared at the mysterious man in front of him with an extremely solemn expression. He knew that a detonating talisman would definitely not be able to kill the other party, but the other party did not dodge the explosion. Not even the corner of his clothes was burned, which made him very desperate. "I hope the explosion just now can attract the attention of the village. Damn it, I should have brought a few more signal flares." Young Hyojin had no choice but to use the detonating talisman to attack, because he had just used up the signal flares on him. If he wanted to attract the attention of the village, he could only hope to rely on the explosion after the detonating talisman. At the same time, he was also repeatedly thinking about who the mysterious man in front of him with the Tenseigan and the Eye of the Moon was, because in his memory, such a person did not exist in the ninja world of the original spacetime. And looking at his young self in the face of such a strange situation, he did not give up and was still trying to save himself. Hyojin's mouth curled up. "It seems that it was not all luck that I survived the Third Shinobi World War." Listening to Hyojin's words, young Hyojin, who was thinking hard, was stunned. Hyojin smiled and said, You should be wondering who I am now, right? And after comparing all the Otsutsuki in my memory, I found that none of them match, right? Young Hyojin was taken aback. How do you know? Hyojin smiled and said, What do you think? Young Hyojin's face sank. The back of your clothes has the words 5th generation Naruto, but the Naruto in the village is obviously 3 generations. There are only 2 explanations for this situation: either you are playing a prank, or you are from the future. Hyojin said, Continue. Young Hyojin paused and then said, The Tenseigan is a pupil technique that can only be awakened by the Hyuga clan and the Otsutsuki clan on the moon. You are either a future Hyuga clan or a future Otsutsuki clan on the moon. But how can you have the Eye of the Moon? Isn't that the eye of the chakra ancestor, Otsutsuki Kagaya? Hyojin said, Yes, whether it is the Hyuga clan or the Otsutsuki clan on the moon, how can they have the Eye of the Moon? So who do you think I am? While thinking, young Hyojin's face was dignified at first, then a strange light bloomed in his eyes, and he said in surprise, You are not the future me, are you? Hyojin smiled and said, Why do you say that? Young Hyojin's thoughts suddenly became clear, and he said matter-of-factly, Because the other Kekii network will not waste time on cannon fodder like me. The second update is here, a new week. I beg for recommendation votes, please. Chapter 1425. Although Hyojin's tone was solemn, he still looked at Hyojin expectantly, trying to get an affirmative answer from his mouth. Hyojin smiled and said, I'm very happy to see you. Hyojin suddenly became excited. I succeeded? Not only did I awaken the Tenseigan, but I also have the Eye of the Moon? There is no doubt that after experiencing the cruel Third Shinobi War, Hyojin has made up his mind to awaken the Tenseigan even at the cost of his life. The feeling of having his life in the hands of others is something he doesn't want to experience anymore. Hyojin gently nodded. Well, although there were some twists and turns in the process, it was indeed a success. After the excitement, Hyojin was a little worried. Is it okay to tell me this? At the most critical moment just now, Hyojin didn't make a move, so from this point, Hyojin can see that although he achieved Kekii Genkai in the future, his actions should still be limited. At least he can't change history unscrupulously, so he is a little worried about whether the future will change after knowing this information. Hyojin pointed to the Eye of the Moon between his eyebrows and explained, Don't worry, after I leave, your memory will be sealed. It won't affect our future. Hyojin was a little confused. Memory seal? Then why are you telling me this? Isn't this an unnecessary move? It's too risky. Hyojin smiled and said, I just want to tell you that your seemingly humble efforts are not in vain. Although this memory will be sealed by me later, at least at this moment, you should feel better. Hyojin first looked at the Tenseigan in Hyojin's eye socket and the Eye of the Moon between his eyebrows with envy, then his eyes fell on the Naruto Hakusho on Hyojin's body, and said with a smile, Fifth-sama? I actually became Naruto. This is too ironic. Who is Yondaime-sama? Could it be Orochimaru? In Hyojin's opinion, only if the plot changes, and Orochimaru replaces Minato and becomes the 4th generation's Naruto of the village, then he would have a little chance to become the 5th generation's Naruto. After all, his identity as a member of the Hyuga family is there, and it is impossible to become Naruto through normal means. This is common sense. Hyojin casually flicked Naruto's imperial robe and said with a smile, The process was very complicated, but you can rest assured that we didn't lose out. The village offered a price of 100 million, and I reluctantly agreed. The young Hyojin was stunned. My village, Naruto's office. Wave Wind Watergate, who had just completed his mission and returned to the village, was reporting the details of the mission to the 3 generations. Swish, suddenly, an Umbu landed in Naruto's office and reported to the 3 generations Naruto. The perception class sent a message. There was another explosion outside the village. The 3 generations Naruto's eyes turned cold. These rock ninjas are really lawless. Wave Wind Watergate said, I'll go. The 3 generations Naruto nodded. Alright, we can't let those rock ninjas attack our people so unscrupulously near the village. Yes. After saying that, Wave Wind Watergate disappeared in place with a swish. After handing over the mission to Wave Wind Watergate, the 3 generations Naruto was relieved and looked through the other documents. For him, as long as Minato took over, then the trouble would no longer be trouble. In the current ninja world, one-on-one, no one was Minato's opponent. Even he, the ninja hero who was publicly recognized as the strongest Naruto, did not have full confidence in defeating Minato, so he even began to consider handing over the heavy responsibility of Naruto to this young man who shone in the Ninja World War after the war. Looking at the sluggish face of his teenage self, Kuroda smiled and said, You don't have to be so surprised. In the future, you will do a lot of things that seem unimaginable now. You should know your own moral integrity. The young Hyojin was speechless. Swish! At this moment, a kunai flew over with a sharp sound of breaking wind. The young Hyojin's eyes turned cold and said in surprise, Not good. That is, without waiting for Suijin to finish his words, a series of pixel-like black squares folded and opened, and a palm-sized space door was precisely opened in the path of the kunai's flight. In an instant, the flying kunai was swallowed by the space door and disappeared without a trace. Flying Thunder God Kunai. It was not until the kunai disappeared that the young Hyojin finished the second half of his words. At this time, Hyojin retracted his gaze with a smile and said lightly, Don't worry, this space has been sealed by me. Inside Naruto's office, a space door that was only the size of a palm suddenly appeared, and then a flying kunai drilled out from the deep space door, and was fiercely nailed to the wall on the side of Naruto's office. Immediately, the space door disappeared instantly, as if it had never existed. The 3 generations Naruto, who was handling the documents in the office, suddenly raised his head and looked suspiciously at the flying Thunder God kunai that was nailed to the wall. Because the force was not small, it was still buzzing. Swish! At this time, Minato's figure flashed and appeared next to the kunai. The 3 generations frowned. Minato, why are you back? The Minato was also confused. Why am I back? The 3 generations said worriedly, Minato, have you been too tired recently? If your body really can't take it, go back and rest. I'll arrange for someone else to handle the mission. Minato, who felt that something was wrong, had a serious expression. He pulled out the flying Thunder God kunai that was nailed to the wall and observed it for a while, then said, Naruto-sama, I clearly threw this kunai at the scene of the incident, and calculated the landing time before activating the flying Thunder God technique. How did it appear here? Even the experienced Sandaime could sense that something was amiss. Are you sure that the flying Thunder God kunai in your hand is the same one you threw earlier? The Minato nodded heavily. I can't be wrong. The 3 generations Naruto immediately asked, Under what circumstances would this happen? Unless someone transferred the coordinates of the flying Thunder God kunai here in the short period between when I threw the flying Thunder God kunai and performed the flying Thunder God technique. After saying his speculation, Minato himself felt that it was extremely ridiculous. In his opinion, no one in the ninja world should be able to do such a thing. Not only did it require a reaction speed that was faster than his, but it was also more difficult to transfer the flying Thunder God kunai that was dozens of miles away to Naruto's office under Naruto's eyes. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 1426. In Naruto's office, 3 generations Naruto and Minato looked at each other. Outside my village, young Hyojin asked curiously, By the way, why did you come back? Is there something wrong with the future? It's not a big problem, I'm just chasing an annoying guy. With that said, Hyojin came to his young self. I want to leave a mark on you, If that guy targets you at a later time point, I can immediately descend. Young Hyojin nodded quickly. As a transmigrator, his acceptance of time and space was very high, so with a little hint from Hyojin, he understood that the threat he was facing should be an enemy from the future who could travel through time and space. Using the eye of the moon in between his eyebrows, Suijin left a mark on his body that no one below the level of Kekii net could detect, and said, "I'm leaving, wish me good luck." Young Hyojin nodded. "Well, wish me good luck." Hyojin didn't stay any longer, turned and walked out. Young Hyojin shouted, "Hey, don't be too arrogant, be careful when chasing the enemy, don't overturn." Hyojin didn't look back and waved his hand casually. "Don't worry." After saying that, Kuroto disappeared into the sunset with a whoosh. With Hyojin's disappearance, young Hyojin suddenly felt a wave of tiredness, and then fainted on the ground like the others. A moment later, Minato led a team of Umbu to the battlefield again. After waking up the unconscious Konoha ninjas on the ground, the Umbu questioned them one by one, but they found that none of the unconscious people could tell what happened. Even if they used secret techniques to check their memories, they couldn't get any useful information. Because there were no casualties, and it happened to be a tense period of war, so this strange thing was quickly forgotten by Konoha's top management. The only thing that changed was that there was a roll of inconspicuous records in the corner of the archive room. In another spacetime, the one-armed Makurashiki landed on a big tree in my village and looked at Naruto Rock in the distance. "How unlucky!" Murashiki spat softly, depressed. There was no doubt that when he saw the exquisitely carved portrait of Hyojin on Naruto Rock, he knew that the time he traveled back in time was too short. The Hyojin of this time and space was not only an adult, but also the Naruto of this village. "It's all that damned guy's fault for chasing me too closely, causing me to not be able to transmigrate to the most suitable time node. Now, I can only hope that his strength has not reached its peak in this space-time." After pondering for a while, Otsutsuki activated the Byakugan and spied on my village. As a Kekii net that possessed a mutated blue Rinnegan and could manipulate time, Daikuki Urashiki knew very well what kind of backlash he would suffer if he destroyed a Kekii net by traveling through time. However, he did not care, because he had confidence in himself. No matter what kind of timeline correction, he believed that as a Kekii net and with the blue Rinnegan, he would be able to withstand it. At most, he would encounter some unexpected changes. If he could eliminate Hyojin, his mortal enemy, by paying some price, he felt that it was worth it. Therefore, he did not hesitate and immediately searched for traces of Hyojin in this spacetime. Soon, his attention was attracted by the thunder in the forest of death next to my village. Then, his eyes focused and he said with joy, "Found it." Swish! Before his voice fell, Daikuki Urashiki disappeared in place. In the monitoring room next to the forest of death. Looking at the vast snowflakes on the monitor, 3 generations Naruto glared at 4 generations Lei Ying and 4 generations Mizukage. "Shouldn't you give Armai a reasonable explanation?" Just now, the Kirin and the Cloud Ninja Druid who participated in the Chunin exam almost destroyed most of the Forest of Death. Hundreds of monitors in the Forest of Death were also scrapped in the thunder just now, causing the monitoring room that could monitor the overall situation to become blind. Tsunade on the side was indignant. "Experts like Druid and Kirin, you actually arranged for them to participate in the Chunin exam, you are too shameless." Ahem, 4 generations Laying coughed twice, and his face was a little embarrassed. 4 generations Mizukage Goji Yagura was silent. Jiraiya looked at Itachi, who was pretending to be Hyojin, with a gourd on his waist and Naruto's Haori robe. "Kuroto, what should we do now?" Itachi, who was pretending to be Hyojin, knew that Kirin, who was taking the exam in the Forest of Death, was a companion of the organization, so he said, "Now we can only continue. If the exam is interrupted, then these losses will be in vain." While Itachi was talking, A pixel-like black square suddenly appeared in the monitoring room, opening a deep space door. Then, Daikoku Urashiki, with a broken arm, rushed out of the space door, and without saying a word, directly threw a black wooden box on the ground. Clang! With the sound of the wooden box falling to the ground, everyone in the monitoring room was suddenly shocked, and turned to look at Daikoku Urashiki, who had sneaked into the monitoring room without anyone noticing. At this time, a burst of smoke came out of the wooden box that fell to the ground, enveloping Itachi, who was pretending to be Hyojin. Itachi subconsciously wanted to launch Susanoo and slash Totsuken's sword at the mysterious man who attacked him, but considering that he was now pretending to be Hyojin, once he made a move, his identity as Hyojin would be exposed, so he hesitated. It was such a moment of hesitation, Itachi was shocked to find that his body could not move, as if something had frozen him. At this time, Daikoku Urashiki, with a broken arm, looked proud. Hyojin, how is it, are you desperate? This is my ultimate skill, time freeze. Even if you are strong, don't even think about breaking free. After discovering the figure of Hyojin and confirming that Hyojin had not reached the level of blood sequence net through chakra's fluctuations, Daikoku Urashiki, the blood sequence net of the Otsutsuki family, carefully sneaked into the monitoring room and decisively used the magic tool he carried with him, using his strongest sealing technique time freeze, to launch a surprise attack on Hyojin. Time freeze? In surprise, Itachi, who was pretending to be Hyojin, felt that his consciousness had become sluggish, and then everything returned to silence. He could no longer perceive anything, nor could he think. Ha 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 ha, this is the price you pay for underestimating me. Daikoku Urashiki laughed wildly, and the aura of blood sequence net was released without any scruples. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you everyone. Chapter 14:27. The sudden change shocked everyone in the monitoring room. No one knew how the mysterious one-armed man in front of them sneaked into the tightly guarded monitoring room, and they didn't understand why the other party attacked Hyojin as soon as he came up and muttered something that no one could understand at all. What shocked them even more was the chakra on the other party's body. The people in the monitoring room, except for a few staff members who were responsible for controlling the monitors, were the leaders of the various shinobi villages. But these knowledgeable and experienced senior members of the shinobi villages had never felt such a terrible fluctuation of chakra. Even the Jinchuriki, which was regarded as a weapon of war, was dwarfed in front of this chakra and was not worth mentioning. However, the people present, especially the Kage and Jiraiya, Tsunade, and the others of the Sannin, quickly reacted. Some used physical techniques, some used strange powers, and some used ninjutsu. In an instant they launched a full-scale attack on the mysterious man. Seeing a group of ninjas in the monitoring room rushing towards him, the complacent Kupura's expression turned cold, and the Rinnegan in his eye sockets shone with a ray of light. Boom! A huge repulsive force swept out in all directions, and in just a moment, it destroyed the solid monitoring room and sent the group of ninjas who were attacking him flying. At this time, Kupura said with a playful expression, "You monkeys dare to attack me?" After successfully sealing Hyuga Kuroto, the dark cloud that had been shrouding the head of Otsutsuki Motoshiki disappeared in an instant, so at this time, he returned to his previous arrogance. The 3 generations Naruto, who was sent flying by Shinra Tensei to the ground, struggled to get up, glanced at Hyojin, who seemed to be frozen, and immediately asked Kupura, "Who are you?" On the other side, Tsunade also got up and asked, "Why do you have the Rinnegan? What's your relationship with Nagato? Why did you attack us?" The other shinobi village elders also climbed up from various places and looked vigilantly at Okuroshiki. From the outside, although Otsutsuki Urashiki had the Rinnegan and the terrifying chakra that made everyone tremble with fear, His right arm seemed to have been cut off at the shoulder, and his clothes were badly damaged. It looked like he was being chased, and he was in an extremely sorry state. Therefore, everyone subconsciously had a question. Who was chasing after him? Who could hunt him down? Otsutsuki Kiura ignored the questions of the three generations Naruto and Tsunade. Instead, he used the fish basket artifact hanging on his waist to collect the sealed Hyojin. Stop! Seeing this, Mai and the other higher-ups charged forward and launched another attack. With a casual wave of his hand, a huge repulsive force waved out, repelling a group of Konoha executives who were attacking him and sending them flying. Humph! After a cold snort, Otsutsuki curled his lips and said, "You lowly creatures don't even have the qualifications to communicate with me, and you still want to ask me questions? Are you even qualified?" Ha ha ha! After that, Otsutsuki laughed and flew into the air. The huge chakra fluctuations in the monitoring room quickly attracted the attention of a group of candidates who were taking the Chunin exam in the Forest of Death. Sitting on the clay bird, Kuroto looked at Otsutsuki floating in the air in the distance and said in doubt, "Deadale, look over there, who is that?" Deadale looked over and his gaze turned cold as he whispered, "Reincarnation eyes?" On the crown of a towering tree on the ground, Orochimaru, who was dressed as a grass ninja, looked at the distance with a cold expression. "What's going on with this chakra that surpasses the tailed beast?" Not far away, Sasuke, Naruto, Kimimaro, and Haku, who were fighting fiercely not far away, also stopped and jumped to a high place, looking at Otsutsuki floating in the sky with doubt. After a big battle, Hyojin, who was controlling the thunder release clone and comprehending the purple lightning that he had just comprehended, also looked over in doubt. Then, his face sank and he said in disbelief, "Otsutsuki? Why is he here?" Xiang Lin, who was on the side, quickly asked, "Captain, do you know him?" Hyojin, who was controlling the thunder release clone, said in confusion, "I don't really know him, it's just that he shouldn't appear in the shinobi world at this time." Before Hyojin's voice died away, Otsutsuki, who was in the sky, shouted proudly, "Hyojin, you didn't expect it, did you? I won, and now no one on this planet can stop me. Everything here will belong to me." At this time, Otsutsuki was not only proud, but also venting. He couldn't remember how long it had been since he felt the threat of death. In his long life of thousands of years, he was the only one who hunted others, and no one could threaten him. Therefore, although the previous fight with Kuroto was very short, the unforgettable feeling of being only one step away from death had left an indelible psychological shadow in him. Therefore, after winning, he needed to vent it out. Listening to Otsutsuki's shout, Xiang Lin looked at Hyojin with a strange expression. Hyojin was also confused, and he was confused. Not only Hyojin and Xiang Lin, but everyone else present also looked at each other, because from Otsutsuki's shout, it was obvious that the person who was fighting with Otsutsuki was not an outsider, but the fifth-generation Mai Naruto Hyojin. After venting, Otsutsuki did not stay. The blue samsara eyes in his eye sockets surged, and he disappeared into thin air. At the moment Otsutsuki left, Hyojin followed the coordinates of his own mark in this spacetime, forcibly tore open the spacetime barrier with the eye of the moon, and arrived here. Seeing the moment Otsutsuki Mashiro disappeared, Suijin was taken aback. "Am I late?" Immediately, he looked around, and soon found himself in the Forest of Death riding the Thunder Escape clone, so he had a strange look on his face. "Hey, isn't I still here in this spacetime? Then why was that guy so proud when he left?" After returning to the normal spacetime, Otsutsuki immediately became vigilant. He was waiting for the timeline to be retracted, waiting for the correction power to backfire. He knew very well that people who tried to fool history would often be fooled by history. Therefore, after killing Hyojin through time travel, he was ready to suffer the backfire of the space-time correction power. The mutated blue samsara eyes in his eye sockets were watching his surroundings with great vigilance. However, after a while, nothing happened, only the sea breeze blowing slowly. Otsutsuki laughed and said, "I thought I would encounter some inexplicable bad luck, but it turns out that there's nothing. Ha ha ha, it seems that even space-time doesn't dare to disobey me." Before his voice died away, the space-time in front of Otsutsuki distorted, and a figure walked out of the distortion. "I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes." Chapter 1428. After seeing the figure coming out of the distortion, Okatsuki was stunned and murmured, "How is this possible? How is this possible? I have already sealed you." Hyojin didn't answer, but glanced coldly at the fish basket hanging on Okatsuki's waist. He knew that Itachi of that time and space was inside. The short stay just now had allowed him to understand what Okatsuki had done in that time and space. When he found out that Otsutsuka Kiura mistook Itachi, who was pretending to be him at that time, for him and launched a sneak attack shamelessly and even used a magic tool, he did not know whether to laugh or cry. At the same time, he could not help but sigh at the horror of the space-time correction power. There is no doubt that Okatsuki launched the wrong attack in the wrong place, not just because of luck, but also because of the influence of the correction power. It is very likely that Okatsuki's arrival at a time node where Itachi happened to be pretending to be Hyojin is the space-time convergence, to prevent Okatsuki from trampling on history at will. After all, Hyojin is not an ordinary creature. His existence has deeply affected the situation of the shinobi world in recent decades and determined the direction of the Fourth Shinobi World War. Once Hyojin, a key figure, is obliterated, the entire shinobi world's timeline will fall into irreparable chaos. Therefore, the space-time correction power was cleverly arranged to fool the self-righteous Okatsuki. Of course, even without the influence of the corrective power, nothing would have happened to him, because he had already made the deployment in advance and left the coordinates on his body. The reason why he was a step late just now was purely because Itachi was the first target of the Otsutsuki's surprise attack. If Okatsuki's first surprise attack was on Hyojin of that time and space, it would immediately activate the coordinates, and the future Hyojin would instantly descend to that time and space. Looking at the slowly approaching Suijin, Utsuka Urushiki still had a dull look on his face. Is this the bad luck of me changing history? Swish! At this time, Hyojin activated the Tenseigan chakra mode. 9 truth-seeking balls quickly condensed in his hand, forming a dazzling golden sword. Looking at the dazzling golden light in front of him, Mizushi's heart trembled. "No, don't kill me!" Swish! Before he finished speaking, Hyojin's figure brushed past him. Immediately afterward, a stream of blood splattered out, and Daikawa Mashiro, who was staggering, was horrified to find that his left leg had been cut off by Hyojin in an instant. Falling to the ground, Urushiki was frightened. There was no longer the arrogance on his face. He shouted, "Our Otsutsuki clan cannot kill each other. If you kill me, you will be wanted by the whole clan." Hyojin snorted. "I'm not some Otsutsuki." Urshiki Otsutsuki tried his best to persuade him. "No, you are Otsutsuki. With your strength, you will become a member of the clan and be bestowed with a large star map. You will obtain inexhaustible resources." Hyojin said indifferently, "What I need, I will use my own hands to get it. I don't need anyone to give it to me." "Don't kill me. You bastard, don't kill me." Urshiki crawled on the ground, trying to get away from Hyojin, but without an arm and a leg, he could not crawl fast at all. Suijin, on the other hand, still walked towards Otsutsuka Kirishiki unhurriedly. Urshiki, who was crawling on the ground, roared, "Damn it, why can't my hands and legs recover?" These injuries, which should have healed quickly for him as a blood-seizing net, were still bleeding, and there was no sign of recovery. Therefore, although he was also an almost immortal blood-seizing net, he had now completely lost the confidence to fight against Hyojin, even if he was still in the second form. Hyojin, who was approaching, glanced at the fish basket magical artifact on Urshiki's waist. Because Itachi was in the fish basket magical artifact, he had to find a way to take this magical artifact first, to avoid Urshiki's desperate actions. Seeing that Suijin was getting closer and closer, Otsutsuki Makura used the same trick again, once again activating the life-saving secret technique Thousand Paper Crane Blink, turning into a cloud of flying paper cranes and disappearing. Humph! Hyojin snorted, and the eye of the moon between his eyebrows was instantly activated. A space door opened in front of him, and without hesitation, he stabbed the golden wheel reincarnation explosion in his hand into the deep space door in front of him. As soon as Urshiki, who had appeared hundreds of miles away through the paper crane teleportation, landed on the ground, a deep space door appeared behind him. Almost at the same time, a dazzling golden sword pierced out of the space door. Urshiki, who could not avoid it, was shocked to the extreme. He knew that if he was hit again, even with his blood-seizing net, he would completely lose the ability to defend himself. So, he subconsciously used the fish basket magical artifact hanging on his waist to block in front of him. Just when he thought that the golden sword would pierce through his fish basket magical artifact, and then him, the golden sword that pierced out of the space door suddenly stopped in front of the fish basket magical artifact. What? After being taken aback, Kupura immediately reacted and guessed that Kuroto didn't want to destroy this magical artifact, so he immediately untied the fish basket magical artifact from his waist, and then cast a rune on it. While opening a space door, he threw the fish basket magical artifact into the space door. Hyojin, I have cast a curse on my magical artifact. If you can't seal it in 3 seconds, it will self-destruct. After shouting, Urshiki did not dare to delay. He once again launched the paper crane teleportation, hoping that Hyojin would chase after his fish basket magical artifact and spare his life. At this time, Hyojin, who had walked out of the space door, chuckled. Then, he stretched his hand forward and instantly opened a space door. From the deep space door, he grabbed the fish basket magical artifact that Urshiki had just thrown away and casually sealed it. The whole process did not even take a breath. Then, the eye of the moon between Hyojin's eyebrows followed the traces of Urshiki's paper crane teleportation chakra, opened another space door, and stepped in. However, at this time, Hyojin suddenly felt sluggish, and his body was squeezed out of the space door. Inside a different space, Urshiki could not care less about Urshiki, who was lying on the ground covered in blood. He activated the pair of cleansing eyes in his eye sockets that could interfere with time and space. While sealing the space barrier, he cleaned up the space traces left behind by Urshiki. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, thank you to all the students who have tipped today. Thank you everyone. Chapter 1429. Hyojin, who was squeezed out of the space door, suddenly had a cold look in his eyes, and the eye of the moon, between his eyebrows, detected a strange ocular power. This ocular power was not only strange, but also very strange. It was not the Byakugan, Sharingan, Rinnegan, and other ocular power that Hyojin was familiar with, but a kind of ocular power that he had never seen before. Could it be Nagato's eyes? Suddenly, Hyojin had a guess in his mind. The message left by Nagato, the early appearance of Otsutsuki Motoshiki, and the Otsutsuki Motoshiki had mentioned, and other information were connected in his mind. Nagato's eyes must have fallen into their hands, and what stopped me from tracking just now was most likely the eyes that can interfere with time and space. When Nagato fought with Obsidian, he used his eyes to block time and space, making the time and space ninjutsu performed by Obsidian, who was still in the realm of Six Path at that time, unexpectedly ineffective. It can be seen that Nagato's eyes have a special restraining effect on the time and space ninjutsu. At the same time, Hyojin also confirmed one thing and whispered, "It seems that there are far more Otsutsuki hidden in the ninja world than just Otsutsuki Motoshiki, who would have saved him just now. Is it Otsutsuki Mamashiki Kinshiki? Or is it the Ichiki that Otsutsuki Motoshiki mentioned?" Motoshiki, Kinshiki, these three Otsutsuki, Hyojin still has some vague impression, but he really has no impression of the Ichiki that Motoshiki mentioned. And from the analysis of Otsutsuki Motoshiki's words, this Ichiki seems to be more familiar with the ninja world than him, and more familiar with himself. With this thought, Hyojin launched the Eye of the Moon again, wanting to try to track again. But this time, his Eye of the Moon did not find any trace, and the space fluctuations left by Otsutsuki Motoshiki just now seemed to have been erased by someone. Narrowing his eyes slightly, Kuroda felt a trace of threat. Although the combat power of Otsutsuki Kimpra was beyond his expectation, he was not his opponent at all, even not as difficult as the Six-Path, Obsidian, and Madara. However, Urushiki Otsutsuki was a real Otsutsuki after all. He had too many evil tricks up his sleeves. For example, he had just traveled through time and space, as well as the time freeze, that he had used to attack Itachi, which made Hyojin a little afraid. At this moment, Hyojin suddenly felt a slight dizziness. He frowned and instantly realized that this was the aftermath of the series of space-time distortions brought about by Otsutsuki attacking Itachi in history. When he was attacked, Itachi still had the gourd with the dragon vein sealed on him, so Otsutsuki attack not only erased Itachi from history, but also erased the dragon vein at the same time. The dragon vein played a very important role in Hyojin's promotion of the bloodline net, so the dragon vein was erased from history, directly affecting the current Hyojin. Feeling the disorder and distortion of the surrounding space-time, Hyojin thought to himself, "This is not good, I must repair history immediately, otherwise, the subsequent impact will make this space-time unrecognizable." Not caring about chasing Otsutsuki, Hyojin quickly activated the plow treasure again and opened the space-time tunnel in the different space. Otsutsuki sighed softly. "Phew, I finally stopped him." Otsutsuki, who was lying in a pool of blood, shouted, "You bastard, did you do it on purpose? That guy is so scary, why didn't you tell me?" Otsutsuki, who was riding Nagato's body, returned to his seat. "I reminded you." "No, you didn't." Otsutsuki was furious and shouted, "You didn't tell me at all that he could kill me. Do you know that I almost died in the hands of that guy? Almost." Otsutsuki was silent for a while, then said, "It was indeed my mistake. I seem to have overestimated you." His previous warning to Otsutsuki was not serious enough, mainly because he thought that even if Mora was defeated, he would at least have no problem keeping his life. He didn't expect that even though both of them were Kekkai Genkai, Pushur couldn't even escape and almost died in the hands of Suijin, which was a bit beyond his expectations. Otsutsuki expression froze. Glancing at Mora, who was lying in a pool of blood, Otsutsuki asked, "After achieving the bloodline net, how long has it been since you went back for training?" "Humph." With a light snort, Otsutsuki said angrily, "I am different from you. I am a genius who has awakened the time reincarnation eye. Training is meaningless to me." Otsutsuki said lightly, "So you are not his opponent." Otsutsuki was furious. "You also look down on me?" Otsutsuki said with a solemn expression, "The descendants of Kagaya who live here are called ninjas. Although most of them only have a short life of a few decades, many of them have experienced more battles in their lifetime than the most experienced warriors in our clan in 1,000 years. Otsutsuki looked disdainful. "It's just a group of monkeys who control inferior chakra." Ignoring Otsutsuki, Otsutsuki continued, "These ninjas start training from birth. Some go to the battlefield when they are a few years old. They have become experienced warriors in their teens. Many even fight until death. The expression of the cursing Okura Shiki gradually changed. The long life and advanced technology of the Otsutsuki family allowed them to plunder resources from all over the universe without the need for cruel internal friction. Therefore, in their long life, most of the time is to plunder the natural energy of a planet. Even if they encounter the indigenous people who resist, they can use their overwhelming strength to quickly solve the battle. Therefore, to them, the battles were just boring rounds and rounds of crushing. Even if they really encounter a strong opponent, there will be a high-level warrior who specializes in combat to deal with it. Like Pushur, there is no need to take any risk. Because of this, when he learned about the cruel living environment of the ninjas, Pushur realized why Hyojin is so terrifying. Now you should understand the difference between you and him. After a pause, Otsutsuki continued, Hyojin is the most powerful and cunning ninja on this planet. He defeated all the enemies here, including Otsutsuki Kagaya. Humph! Otsutsuki Mora snorted and complained, what bad luck, there is such a guy in this damn place. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 1430. In the face of Okatsuki's complaints, Okatsuki couldn't help but agree, it's really abnormal. Under normal circumstances, the descendants of the indigenous bloodline will be far weaker than the orthodox Okatsuki. In just 1 or 2,000 years, the ninja world has produced Okatsuki Feki, Atsuki Hamura, Uchiha Obsidian, Uchiha Madara, and Hyojin. These 6-path level or even Kekkei net level bloodline descendants, one after another. Especially Hyojin's bloodline descendants, which made the orthodox Okatsuki feel extremely difficult to deal with, have never appeared in the memory of Okatsuki. Therefore, Okatsuki's puzzlement was no less than that of Urashiki. Okatsuki, who was lying in a pool of blood, barely sat up at this time. While recovering from his injuries, he asked, by the way, what's going on with his eyes? Why can his pupillary technique suppress my chakra? Hearing Urashiki mention the Tenseigan, Okatsuki rubbed his forehead with a headache. That's called Tenseigan. Like cleansing eye, it's also a special mutation of our Byakugan. Okatsuki froze for a moment. Tenseigan? Okatsuki said, well, this kind of pupillary technique increases combat effectiveness significantly. If it falls in the hands of people who are not good at fighting, it may not be a threat. But in the hands of a fighting genius like Hyojin, its power even exceeds the second stage of most orthodox Okatsuki. Okatsuki curled his lips. No wonder he's so strong. At this time, glancing at Okatsuki's still bleeding wound, Okatsuki frowned and said, but I haven't heard before that the Tenseigan pupillary technique can suppress our chakra recovery. Okatsuki's eyes widened. Then why can't I heal my wound? Withdrawing his gaze, Okatsuki said, I don't know much about the Tenseigan. Maybe this is also one of the abilities of the Tenseigan. In short, we have to be extra careful when fighting with the Tenseigan. It's cleansing eye and Tenseigan. What the hell is going on in this damn place? Why are there so many rare mutations? After muttering to himself, Otsutsuki said, Ichiki, I urgently need chakra right now. I've lost all my magic artifacts. Ichiro Otsutsuki pondered for a moment, then nodded and instilled a part of his chakra into Pushur. Then he said, after you recover from your injuries, don't act on your own again. Wait for Mamashiki and Kinshiki to arrive. Daikawa Kyura asked, when Mamashiki and the others arrive, how are you going to deal with that guy? Ichishiki Otsutsuki replied, Hyojin is too dangerous. If possible, of course it is best to get rid of him, but before we do it we should be fully prepared. Otsutsuki Kyura nodded. I will listen to you this time, but I want his Tenseigan. Otsutsuki Ishiki frowned slightly. Seeing this, Daikawa Kyura said unhappily, You already have Cleansing Eye, do you still want to compete with me for the Tenseigan? Ichiro Otsutsuki said, I just think that even if you get the Tenseigan, it doesn't make much sense. At the time node of the Chunin exam, after lifting the time freeze of Itachi, Hyojin used Genjutsu to modify the memory of all the ninjas near the Forest of Death at that time, altering the scene of Otsutsuki's raid on the monitoring room to the accidental explosion of the monitoring room. Because of the large number of people involved, and most of them are very vigilant elite ninjas, it took him a long time to complete all the memory tampering. After repeatedly confirming that there were no omissions, he quickly left the time node and returned to the space and time where he was. Out of the space tunnel, Hyojin floated quietly on the sea, and finally confirmed that there was no distortion of space and time. He breathed a long sigh of relief. Later, he opened a space door and returned to the battlefield where he first fought with Otsutsuki and found the fishing rod that was left on the battlefield. In this unexpected encounter, although he failed to kill Otsutsuki, Hyojin's harvest is not small. Among them, the biggest reward was naturally the plow relic that could travel through time. The fishing rod and fishing basket that were left behind by Mupushi were not ordinary items either. Especially the fish basket, it seems that not only can it store chakra, but it can also store ninja tools and general items. Moreover, the texture of these two artifacts is also very special. After Hyojin's initial judgment, it seems to be composed of a highly condensed chakra. The strength of chakra is not under Itachi's artifact, Taken and Jishui's artifact, Yata no Kagami. From the perspective of the ninja world, it should be a full artifact-level artifact. As for the broken arm left by Otsutsuki on the battlefield, Hyojin can't find it. But this is also normal. The body of the Kekii net is not ordinary flesh and blood, but a special kind of chakra. After losing the support of Otsutsuki's chakra, the broken arm will inevitably disintegrate. After cleaning the battlefield, Hyojin once again launched Uten Biraban and directly opened a space door leading to the wedding stage. Then he adjusted his dress and calmly stepped into the space door. In an instant, Hyojin returned to the wedding stage. Seeing Hyojin return safely, Kuroto, who was worried, immediately rushed up and said, Kuroto, didn't you say you would come back soon? Why did it take so long? And the members of the Shadow Guards who were guarding Kuroto all focused on the fishing rod and fish basket in Hyojin's hands. This was because they remembered very clearly that the mysterious Big Tube Mu was holding these two magic tools in his hand and hanging on his waist. At this moment, these two magic tools fell into the hands of Hyojin, so the result of the battle was self-evident. So, like Kuroto, they all breathed a sigh of relief. All the audience in the venue cheered when they saw this. There is no doubt that Hyojin won. Hyojin threw the two magic tools to the Shadow Guards on the side, then comforted Kuroto, "Didn't I come back safely? Besides, the opponent is also a Kekii net. My speed is not slow." Kuroto looked up and down at Hyojin at this time, and asked worriedly, "Are you hurt?" Hyojin smiled and said, "No." After confirming that Hyojin was not hurt, Kuroto was relieved and puzzled. "The opponent is a Kekii net. You defeated him without any injury?" Hyojin shrugged and said, "I am also surprised." Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you everyone. Chapter 1431. With the strong return of Hyojin with the Otsutsuki Makura, the surprised audience in the wedding venue finally breathed a sigh of relief, and their hearts were at ease. Although no one knew the course of the battle, the enemy's magic weapon had been taken by Hyojin, and Hyojin looked unscathed. This undoubtedly meant that Hyojin had won. On the stage, Hyojin said faintly, "Continue the ceremony." Yes. The members of the Shadow Guard responded in unison, and then respectfully retreated from the stage. Boom, boom, boom. Very soon, the sky above the venue was once again filled with dazzling fireworks, and the cheers from all over the spectator stands were like a tide, surging in from all directions. Hyojin's strength and calmness had greatly eliminated the impact of the Otsutsuki Makura. Although the hidden worries had been buried in the hearts of many people, seeing such a calm and confident Hyojin, everyone felt a little relieved. Kuroto was also quickly infected by Hyojin's calmness. She forgot the shocking change just now and was immersed in the happiness and joy of the wedding again. The lively wedding lasted for a whole day. In the evening, the whole of Mai was still brightly lit, the streets were busy, and pedestrians and tourists were endless. Many villagers who had been celebrating for a whole day even forgot the surprise attack that had happened in the morning. In the main house of the Hyuga family, after sending away the noisy relatives and friends, the newlyweds, Hyojin and Kuroto, could finally rest for a while. When the surroundings gradually quieted down, Kuroto restrained the smile on her face, and her eyes showed worry again. "Kuroto, is what happened during the day really okay?" Hyojin said with some regret. "I'm sorry, I couldn't give you a perfect wedding." Kuroto picked up the Otsutsuki Makura fishing rod and fish basket. "I think it's already perfect. I'll take these as gifts from the Otsutsuki." Hyojin smiled. "You don't say, these two magic weapons are really good gifts." As he spoke, Hyojin took out the plow relic, placed it in front of Kuroto, and ordered, "Scan." Beep beep, accompanied by a notification, the plow relic immediately shot out a beam of light towards the fishing rod and fishing basket that Kuroto was holding in her hands. A moment later, the plow relic said with a mechanical voice, "The target scanned is initially determined to be an active chakra magic weapon with the function of absorbing and storing chakra. If necessary, it can also be used as a material for refining pills." "Pill?" Kuroto was stunned for a moment and asked curiously, "What's that?" "I'm not too sure about the specifics. Just think of it as a kind of chakra that can be swallowed directly." After a pause, Hyojin continued, "This fishing rod and fish basket are both highly active chakra. If you can successfully refine them into pills that can be swallowed directly, then you may be able to awaken the Tenseigan after eating them." Kuroto was surprised. "Really?" Hyojin nodded. "Well, these two magic weapons chakra should be enough for you to awaken the Tenseigan. As for whether you can break through to the six-path realm, it's hard to say." In fact, Hyojin already had a guess about the origin of these two magic weapons. Such a highly active chakra magic weapon could not be made with ordinary craftsmanship. Even the Totsuken sword and Yata no Kagami, which were known as divine weapons, needed to be attached to something to exist. These two magic weapons that emitted a red light existed purely in the form of chakra. They were not attached to anything. Therefore, Hyojin suspected that these two magic weapons were probably transformed by a Otsutsuki that was close to the six-path realm. According to the description of the plow relic, the Otsutsuki family was also divided into Upper Otsutsuki and Lower Otsutsuki. Lower Otsutsuki often served as servants and guards of Upper Otsutsuki. In some extreme cases, they even served as rations or weapons of Upper Otsutsuki. Not only was Urushiki a noble Kekii net, but he was also a member of the main family. Therefore, there should be a servant of Lower Otsutsuki around him. However, in the previous battle with Hyojin, Urushiki didn't have a servant beside him. When he mentioned the mysterious Ichiki, it didn't seem like he was talking about his servant. Therefore, combined with the special nature of the two magic weapons, and the rule that Lower Otsutsuki would unconditionally offer themselves to Upper Otsutsuki, Hyojin guessed that these two magic weapons were Urushiki's servants. Of course, Hyojin didn't tell Kuroto this guess. First, he wasn't sure, and second, it was too sensational. After a while, Kuroto asked carefully, "Kuroto, will those Otsutsuki attack us again in the future?" Hyojin looked out of the window. "I don't know." Really, Kuroto was a little depressed. Hyojin said, "Well, Let's not talk about these unhappy things today. In the current situation, it was no longer a question of whether Urushiki would cause trouble for Hyojin, but whether Hyojin would let Urushiki go. Early the next morning, the village was still immersed in yesterday's party, but Hyojin and a group of senior officials had already gathered in Naruto's office. That's the general situation. Kuroda gave a brief account of the battle between him and Otsutsuka Kiura. He omitted the part where he traveled through time and space, because it would be useless to talk about it, it would only cause unnecessary panic. After learning that Otsutsuka Urashiki was not Suejin's opponent at all, the elders breathed a sigh of relief. Tsunade said, "It seems that things are not as bad as we thought." Jiraiya echoed, "Yes, the ninja world should be safe in the short term." The three generations were a little puzzled. Kuroda, the opponent, is at the same realm as you, and he is also an Urushiki who crossed the universe. Why is his combat power so weak? Hyojin said, "Blood kinesis net is just a realm. The specific combat power depends on who it is." Several elders nodded. This was not difficult to understand. It was like the same ninjutsu, but in the hands of different people, the power would be very different. Hyojin continued, "The biggest threat now is not Urushiki, but the other Urushiki who attacked Nagato." Kakashi was surprised. "There are other Urushiki?" Jiraiya was also stunned. "Why, the one who attacked Nagato was not this Urushiki?" Hyojin shook his head. "I suspect that there are at least 4 Urushiki hidden in the ninja world. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes." Chapter 1432. What? For? That's impossible. Suddenly, the elders in Naruto's office changed their expressions. Even Itachi, who has always been expressionless, frowned. Hyojin glanced at the crowd and said calmly, "This is just the most conservative estimate. Urashiki, Otsutsuki, Momoshiki, and Kinshiki, these 3 Otsutsuki are the ones that Hyojin is sure to come to the shinobi world. And the Ichishiki mentioned by Urashiki Otsutsuki may also be hidden in the shinobi world. So even if Urashiki Otsutsuki and Ichishiki's possible partners or servants, Hyojin can be sure that Urashiki, Momoshiki, Kinshiki, and Ichishiki are the 4 Otsutsuki." Kakashi asked, "Are they all immortals?" "Almost." Hyojin nodded. In his impression, Momoshiki should be a real six-path, and his physical skills are very good. He almost instantly defeated the 5th Leiying, the 5th Kazekage, the 6th Mizukage, and the 4th generations of Tsuchikage. In a one-on-one situation, he can crush any one of Naruto and Sasuke, and he also has the upper hand for a short period of time. As for Momoshiki's servant, Kinshiki, his strength should be the same as Naruto and Sasuke in the original time and space. He belongs to the incomplete 6-path level, and can also be classified as immortals. Zhuan Shao-chun asked, "Then why did only one appear yesterday?" Hyojin shook his head. "I'm not sure about that. Maybe he was held up by something else, maybe he hasn't arrived yet, or maybe he has other plans." Kakashi continued to ask, "Kuroda, if the 4 of them attack together, do you have a chance of winning?" As soon as Kakashi's voice fell, the other elders looked at Hyojin. This is the most critical question at the moment, and also the question they are most concerned about. After pondering for a moment, Hyojin replied, "It's hard to say. If it was a head-on confrontation, even if it was 1 against 4, Hyojin still had a chance of winning. However, if he was ambushed, the result would be unpredictable. After all, his opponent was the real Otsutsuki, and Hyojin did not know how many strange tricks he had up his sleeve." Soon, Naruto's office fell into a strange silence. After understanding the seriousness of the situation, although the consulting elders were all extremely anxious, they could not help much and could only worry helplessly. Hyojin said, "Don't worry, I won't sit still and wait for death." At this time, Kakashi remembered something and said, By the way, Rock Village formally applied to us to study the Rinnegan left by Madara Uchiha. How should we reply? Tsunade frowned. Isn't it too risky to give them the Rinnegan? Hyojin's eyes flashed, and he smiled. Hey, this is an opportunity. Kakashi asked. What opportunity? Hyojin quickly ordered. Promise Rock Village to hand over the Rinnegan to them as soon as possible. After that, Hyojin didn't explain. He directly opened a space door and disappeared from Naruto's office, leaving a group of consulting elders looking at each other. With Hyojin's approval, Mai was very efficient. In less than half a day, under the witness of 4 generations Kazekage, 4 generations Laying, and 4 generations Mizukage, Madara Uchiha's Rinnegan was handed over to 3 generations Tsuchikage, and a 3-month research agreement was signed. When Rock Village successfully got the Rinnegan, several other villages put down their last doubts. Shubarock Village, who got the Rinnegan, didn't stay any longer. He was personally escorted by 3 generations Tsuchikage and hurriedly left my village. On Claybird, glancing at 3 generations Tsuchikage who was staring at the ground, Deadale said, Old man, why are you so nervous? Isn't it just a pair of Rinnegan? 3 generations Tsuchikage said angrily. What do you know, the Rinnegan is the key to entering the 6-path level. Whether our rock village can turn over, no, whether we can continue or not, depends on the results of the research on the Rinnegan. Deadale said indifferently, You don't have to be so nervous. Humph. 3 generations Tsuchikage opened his mouth and wanted to continue to scold Deadale, but in the end, he closed his mouth and snorted softly. Because indeed, as Deadale said, the current shinobi world is relatively safe. The Akatsuki organization has just experienced a defeat and is being jointly hunted by the 5 great shinobi villages. Moreover, Otsutsuki was also defeated by Hyojin. In theory, apart from Mai, there is no enemy that can threaten them. And if Mai doesn't want to hand over the Rinnegan, the Rock Village can't do anything about it. Therefore, since Mai handed over the Rinnegan this time, he shouldn't play any other tricks. Although this is the truth, but for some reason, 3 generations Tsuchikage felt a little uneasy. Deadale said to himself, Or you can just let me send it back, why do you need to personally escort it? You? 3 generations Tsuchikage's face sank and said, If I let you send the Rinnegan back to the village alone, I'm afraid that I will lose you along with the Rinnegan. Boom. 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 At this moment, a violent explosion came from the ground, and in an instant, smoke and dust covered the entire rock village. Not good. 3 generations Tsuchikage exclaimed. Without waiting for Tsuchikage to give instructions, Deadale changed his previous sloppy attitude and buried his hands in the ninja bag on his waist while urging the clay bird to fly towards the ground. Because the storage device of the Rinnegan is a constant temperature nutrient tank, it's not convenient to transport it on the bumpy clay bird, so the ground team is responsible for transporting it. And the explosion just now was concentrated near the device used to transport the Rinnegan. Swish, 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 just as 3 generations Tsuchikage and Deadale landed on the ground, a figure wearing the Akatsuki red cloud suit came out of the smoke. Akatsuki? How dare you? With just a glance, 3 generations Tsuchikage recognized the enemy who attacked them. It was their old acquaintance, the Akatsuki organization. Therefore, the 2 sides didn't talk any nonsense, and a melee broke out in an instant in the holy power space. After a moment, with a twisting whirlpool, Obsidian, who was carrying the Rinnegan storage device, returned to the holy power space and said to Hyojin, who was already waiting there, Got it. Hyojin just glanced at the device that stored the Rinnegan, then nodded. Very good, you can now transplant this pair of Rinnegan. What? Obsidian was surprised at first, then immediately stared at Hyojin and asked, Kuroto, are you planning to plot against someone this time? Chapter 1433. Surprised by Obsidian's keenness, Hyojin looked at Obsidian with a surprised expression. Obsidian curled his lips and said, "Don't look at me like that, I have suffered so many losses in your hands, even if I'm really a pig, I should have learned to be smarter by now." Hyojin smiled and said, "Yes, letting you attack Rock Village and snatch the Rinnegan was indeed only part of my plan. Your goal is to let me regain the Rinnegan?" The obtainer became serious. "You want me to regain the Rinnegan?" "Yes." Hyojin nodded. Obsidian was a little puzzled. "Then why do you want me to attack Rock Village? With your current strength, it should be easy for you to solve the other villages. There is no need to do this at all, right?" "Solve the other villages?" Hyojin paused and shook his head. No, I'm doing this to preserve them." Obsidian was even more puzzled. "Preserve the other villages?" Kuroto said, "If there isn't enough threat, then I don't even need to take action. The shinobi villages will slowly disappear, so I have to do something to keep them vigilant and maintain the necessity of their existence." Obsidian asked in confusion, "Why? You can clearly unify the shinobi world now and let everyone enjoy peace. Why do you want to do this?" Hyojin glanced at Obsidian. "Peace. Yes, you are now the strongest sage in the shinobi world. As long as you are here, the shinobi world can stay away from war and killing forever. There is no need for shinobi villages to exist anymore." Hyojin shook his head. Obsidian's face sank. "Did I say something wrong?" "Unfortunately, the shinobi world is not an isolated island." After sighing with emotion, Hyojin explained, "Your ideal of peace is indeed desirable, but for the shinobi world, absolute peace is a slow poison. It will castrate our fighting spirit, lower our vigilance, interfere with our judgment, and make us unable to resist the predators in the starry sky." The Obsidian asked, "Space pirates? You mean the Otsutsuki clan?" Hyojin nodded gently and then said, "If we are the only ones in the universe, the peace you yearn for is not impossible, but the reality is that we are only a small part of this universe. If we can't maintain enough competitiveness and vigilance, we will be completely wiped out, just like the lives on the planets destroyed by the Otsutsuki. Even the traces of our existence will be erased. Won't we be more competitive if we stick together?" Hyojin chuckled and said, "Just think about it, if I eliminate all disputes in the shinobi world, would there still be any basis for the existence of shinobi? If there is no battlefield as a stage to show their talent and a tool to test their diligence, how can the next generation of children prove themselves? Based on seniority? Naruto's son will continue to be Naruto's shinobi? Jonin's son will continue to be a Jonin?" Obsidian was silent. He really hasn't considered this problem. Although the war has brought a lot of suffering to the shinobi world, but for the ninjas, war is undoubtedly the fairest and quickest way to rise. Without the Second Shinobi World War, there would be no Mai Sanin. Without the Third Shinobi World War, there would be no Golden Flash's counterattack. Without the Akatsuki, there would be no Amatsukami like Hyojin. Competition is often the best catalyst for progress. Hyojin continued, "Before we completely master the interstellar travel technology and start a full-scale competition with Otsutsuki in the universe, I must maintain the necessary internal competition and a stage for the younger generation to show their talents. I can't let the shinobi world become a pool of stagnant water. So even without you, I will create a new Akatsuki organization, create a new shadow over everyone's head, so that everyone will always be vigilant and get used to being vigilant." Obsidian wanted to say something several times but hesitated, but the harm of war, Hyojin waved his hand and said, "Don't worry, the previous war that involved several major countries and affected countless civilians will not happen again. Such a war is meaningless and will only increase hatred and destroy the production base of the shinobi world. What I need is a local conflict, a controllable confrontation." Unlike the idealists like Hashirama, Hyojin is very pragmatic. He needs confrontation and competition, but these are only in the service of the most critical technological progress, so he will control the intensity of the competition to avoid a fierce war like the previous few shinobi wars. In his plan, in the future, he will use the Land of Fire as the core and gradually use gentle means to gradually merge the surrounding small countries and the lonely Land of Water, and the entire ocean will be under his control. Then, he will further compress the living space of the cloud, rock, and sand crypsis, and some rich areas of the Land of Thunder, Wind, and Earth will also be under his control. While keeping these 3 shinobi villages, they will completely lose the ability to launch a large-scale war, forcing them to transfer their funds from large-scale ninja training to elite ninja training and technology research and development. They maintain this state of fighting without breaking, competing with each other and cooperating with each other. In this way, not only can the geniuses and elites of both sides have a stage to show their talents, but also can let ordinary but talented children like Minato have a channel to rise. It would also allow the researchers from both sides to have an arena where they could compete with each other's research result. In short, Hyojin needs cloud, rock, and sand crypsis to play the role of competitors and pursuers, constantly spurring his subordinates, his researchers, and his descendants from behind. When one day the shinobi world masters the technology of interstellar travel and colonization, this role of competitor can be played by the Otsutsuki, and the shinobi world will be truly peaceful. After a long silence, Obsidian asked, "Is it really necessary to do this? Is it really necessary to be vigilant all the time?" Hyojin said, "You should have heard about what happened at my wedding, right?" Obsidian nodded. "Well, I heard about it." Kuroto chuckled and said mockingly, "But you probably don't know that I was so close to being erased by that Otsutsuki in the timeline, right?" "What?" Obsidian was startled for a moment. Hyojin talked about the battle between him and Otsutsuki Urashiki through the noble phantasm, Plow, and immediately asked, "Now, do you think it is necessary?" Here's the first chapter, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. Chapter 1434. After listening to Hyojin's description of the strange battle between him and Otsutsuka Motoshiki in the past timeline, Obsidian was stunned at first, and then he broke out in a cold sweat. Everyone had times when they were weak. Even if they were born as gods, it was impossible for them to be at their peak from birth. Therefore, Otsutsuka Motoshiki can travel through the timeline and find the weak time of the enemy to attack. Not to mention anything else, just this incredible battle strategy makes Kuroto shudder instinctively. After a while, Obsidian looked at Hyojin with a complicated expression. "Fortunately, it was you who won." This sigh is not only because he is glad that Kuroto defeated Otsutsuki Urashiki, but also because he is glad that Kuroto defeated him, because in his opinion, if he was the one who controlled the shinobi world and was attacked by Otsutsuki, then he would have already been obliterated by Otsutsuki in the timeline, because he can't imagine a confrontation of this level. Hyojin said, "In addition to the Otsutsuka Motoshiki who appeared at my wedding, I suspect that there are at least 1 to 3 Otsutsuka Motoshiki hidden in the shinobi world." "There are so many?" Obsidian's face sank and asked, "Is this the reason why you asked me to transplant the Rinnegan again?" Hyojin said, "Yes, in addition to Motoshiki, there is at least 1 Otsutsuka Motoshiki hidden in the shinobi world, and he is most likely the guy who attacked Nagato." Obsidian thought of something, and his expression changed. "Did he watch the 4th Shinobi World War?" Hyojin nodded. "Nagato was attacked after the battle with you. The timing is too subtle, so I suspect that when the war broke out, the other party was observing in the dark, and then accidentally discovered the magic of Nagato's eyes, so he took advantage of the time when you and I were fighting to launch a surprise attack on Nagato and kidnapped Nagato." After a pause, Hyojin continued, The reason why I couldn't get rid of Nagato this time is because of Nagato's eyes, and the person controlling those glasses is most likely not Nagato himself. After understanding the threat facing the shinobi world, Obsidian became serious and asked, "What do you want me to do?" Hyojin smiled. "Do what you're good at. Old profession?" After a slight hesitation, Obsidian asked, "You want me to contact those Otsutsuki in the name of Akatsuki?" Hyojin's eyes narrowed. "I won't let them attack me again when they're ready. I'm going to take the initiative to attack, but they're hiding very well. They might even be hiding in a different dimension, so I can only use you to lure them out. What's the point? We fought so fiercely before, but the other party didn't come looking for me?" Obsidian raised his doubts. Hyojin said, "The situation now is different from before. I easily defeated Otsutsuki, who is also a Kekkei net, and the Otsutsuki who controls Nagato's eyes is hiding from me. This shows that the other party is either not in a good state, or he doesn't have the confidence to win. In short, they shouldn't be able to do anything to me now." Obsidian suddenly understood. "I understand they didn't put us in their eyes before, so they didn't bother to intervene in our dispute, but this time you taught them a big lesson, making them realize that it's not easy to defeat you, so it's possible that they are looking for allies in the shinobi world to deal with you." Hyojin smiled and said, "Yes, and if the other party is really watching the entire Fourth Shinobi World War as I analyzed, then he should have some understanding of your strength. As long as you regain the Rinnegan, then the probability of him winning you over is very high." Obsidian hurriedly asked, "If those Otsutsuki really come looking for me, what should I do?" Hyojin said lightly, "You only need to do one thing, and that is to find their hiding place. And then? And then?" With a smile, Hyojin glanced at Jubi, who was sealed on the side, and his eyes gradually became cold. "Of course, I will personally return the gift." Swish teams of ninjas began to assemble and hurriedly left my village, which was still immersed in the celebration of Hyojin's wedding. When the news that the Rinnegan of the Rock Village was robbed reached my village, especially the news that Uchiha Obsidian, the leader of the Akatsuki organization, had reappeared, the ninja coalition became nervous again. When the name Akatsuki organization once again appeared in everyone's field of vision and accurately took away the Rinnegan of Uchiha Madara, there was no need for anyone to emphasize anything. The ninjas realized the seriousness of the matter. There is no doubt that the psychological shadow left on everyone by Obsidian in the Fourth Shinobi World War has not dissipated. 3 generations Tsuchikage-sama, who returned to my village, directly proposed to hold the Gakage assembly. This time, Rock Village suffered a big setback. Not only were they attacked by the Akatsuki organization, but they also lost the Rinnegan, which was the common property of the 5 great shinobi villages. At the Gakage assembly, 3 generations Tsuchikage-sama said gloomily, "The Akatsuki organization is too abominable, we must completely wipe them out." The focus of 4 generations of Kazekage is obviously on the Rinnegan of Uchiha Madara. It is imperative to recapture the lost Rinnegan as soon as possible. If we let Uchiha Obsidian have the Rinnegan again, then no one can be his opponent except for Naruto. Listening to the proposal of 4 generations of Kazekage, 3 generations Tsuchikage-sama on the side was embarrassed and had to agree. "Yes, we must recapture the Rinnegan as soon as possible." Bang! 4 generations Laying slammed the conference table and said angrily, "It's this Uchiha Obsidian again." New hatred and old hatred added together made 4 generations Laying angry. Kakashi, who represented Hyojin at the meeting, had a dignified face, but he was embarrassed in his heart. Obviously, as a witness who witnessed the last battle with Otsutsuki Kagaya, he knew that Obsidian had been incorporated by Hyojin, so this attack was undoubtedly done by Hyojin. Jiraiya and Tsunade, who knew about it, looked at ease. At present, in addition to Hyojin, Kakashi, Naruto, and Sasuke, 3 generations Naruto, Xuan Shao-chun, Jiraiya, Tsunade and Itachi, who were the elders of the village, knew that obsidian had been incorporated by Hyojin. Other than that, no one else in the village knew about it, so the leaders of Mai did not have to worry about other villages knowing that Hyojin had incorporated the Akatsuki organization. As for why Hyojin did this, they had not figured it out yet, but they roughly guessed that it might be related to dealing with Otsutsuki hidden in the shinobi world. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. In addition, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you everyone. Chapter 1435. After a brief discussion, a consensus was quickly reached, and as Hyojin expected, everyone unanimously approved the proposal to kill the Akatsuki organization. The proposal was passed, but how to do it was difficult for everyone. Although the previous Fourth Shinobi War ended with the defeat of the Akatsuki organization, in fact, except for Uchiha Obsidian and Uchiha Madara, who were defeated by Hyojin, the ordinary members of the Akatsuki organization did not directly participate in the war, so they did not suffer too much loss. For example, the Mist Squad and Sasori of the Akatsuki organization, as well as the elite ninjas of Nagato's side, were all present. In contrast, because the ninja coalition was destroyed by Uchiha Obsidian and Uchiha Madara, the Chunin and the Jonin, as the backbone of the Akatsuki organization, suffered heavy losses. Therefore, if Hyojin, his Kage guards, and Amatsukami don't take action, then the ninja coalition's advantage over the Akatsuki organization will not be as great as imagined. After all, Obsidian has taken away Uchiha Madara's Rinnegan. It must be known that Uchiha Madara's Rinnegan has been nourished by Jubi Chakra, and under the control of Obsidian and Madara, it has reached the peak of 6-path level twice. Just like Hyojin's Tenseigan after the first ritual, the eyes themselves can be regarded as 6-path Rinnegan. After Obsidian regained his eyes, his strength was at the strongest level below 6-path level. As long as Hyojin doesn't take action, even if the Kages from other villages come together, they won't be able to do anything to Obsidian. Therefore, after the end of the Kage assembly, several Kages found Hyojin in the Hyuga family's mansion, hoping that Hyojin can personally take action and wipe out the Akatsuki organization. After sending away the Kages, Kakashi, who accompanied the Kages, asked Hyojin, "Kage, what is your plan? Why did you let Obsidian attack Rock Village and snatch the Rinnegan?" Hyojin smiled and asked, "The news of the Akatsuki's revival should have spread by now, right?" Kakashi's eyes narrowed as he vaguely guessed something and said, "Well, at the Gakage assembly just now, the Shinobi Alliance has formed hundreds of search squads, and with these squads searching the entire Shinobi world, it won't take long for the entire Shinobi world to know that the Akatsuki has reappeared and taken away the Rinnegan. Very good. Don't block the news. Let it spread as far as possible." After a pause, Hyojin winked at Kakashi. "As for the Akatsuki organization, you will be in charge." Kakashi asked, "To what extent do I have to go?" Hyojin said casually, "Don't let the people of the Akatsuki organization get caught. If there is a suitable opportunity, we can also pretend to fight a few times. As long as we don't get caught, it's fine." Kakashi asked again, "Kage, are you doing this to target those Atsuki? "Yes." Hyojin nodded. After getting a positive answer, Kakashi didn't ask any more questions and turned around to make the arrangement. After Kakashi left, Hyojin directly activated Yomi Bairasuk and stepped into the space gate. In a blink of an eye, Hyojin came to the air fortress floating on the sea, then walked to the power room and carefully inspected the Tenseigan that is in the process of fusion. At this rate, the fusion should be completed in a week. After more than a month of fusion, the fusion state of the giant Tenseigan is nearing the end. According to Hyojin's estimation, the fusion should be completed in another week. And according to the results of the inspection, Hyojin can now be sure that after the complete fusion, his giant Tenseigan will be able to enter the 6th Tao level. In fact, the giant Tenseigan on the moon itself is very close to the 6th Tao level, otherwise Otsutsuki Samurai wouldn't be able to use it to control the moon to hit the shinobi world. After all, the moon in the shinobi world is not a natural celestial body. It is an artificial celestial body condensed by the Hamura brothers using the 6th Tao level Kaijutsu Tensei, a powerful 6th Tao level sealing technique. Without the power close to the 6th Tao level, it can't affect the movement of the moon. So whether the giant Tenseigan on the moon fuses with the giant Tenseigan of the Hyuga clan, or vice versa, it will become a true 6th Tao level lifeform after the fusion. 1 week after muttering to himself, Hyojin left the power room and called for Gaara. After bowing to Hyojin, Gaara asked, "My lord, what can I do for you?" Hyojin said, "I need to borrow a tail for a while. I'll listen to your arrangements." Although a little surprised, Gaara didn't hesitate at all. Hyojin didn't say any nonsense and once again activated the Yoki Hirasaka and brought Gaara to Obsidian's godly power space. Obsidian, who had been transplanted with the Rinnegan, was still in the adaptation period. Seeing that Hyojin had brought a young man, he looked at him curiously, and his face immediately changed. "This chakra? He is Ichibi's Jinchuriki?" Because he had resurrected the 10 tails, Obsidian was very familiar with all kinds of tailed beast chakra, and with a little perception, he recognized Gaara's identity as Ichibi's Jinchuriki. "Yes." Hyojin nodded. Obsidian sighed and said, "It turns out that Ichibi has always been in your hands. I thought it was in the resurrection period." Hyojin smiled and said, "I didn't expect you to resurrect the 10 tails without Ichibi." Obsidian said, "Why did you bring Ichibi's Jinchuriki here?" Kuroda looked at the sealed Jubi and said lightly, "Jubi is not in his peak state, so he is not of much use to me, so I need to restore him to his peak state." After the hard work of Obito in the 4th Shinobi War, the 10-tailed beast in front of him has already completed the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th-tailed beasts. These 8-tailed beasts are almost complete. For ordinary people, the 10 tails in this state is already a superweapon. Whether it was Obsidian or Madara, they all relied on the 10 tails in this state to successfully enter the 6th path level. But for Hyojin's Kekkei network, the current state of the 10 tails is still a little lacking. So he deliberately brought Gaara here to make up the last missing tail for the 10 tails and restore it to its peak state before it was dismembered by the 6th path sage. Only the 10 tails in its peak state is barely qualified to be the trump card of Hyojin's Kekkei network. The first update is here, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.